All right. Thank you very much, everybody. The mayor is currently unavailable to join us. Hopefully he will be able to join us at some point this evening. So at this point, I would now like to call the January 12th, 2021 Longmont City Council regular session to order. Could we please start with the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, you're here. Councilmember Christensen?
Here.
Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring?
Here.
Councilmember Martin?
Here.
Councilmember Peck? She's here. Councilmember Waters?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right. At this time, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not going to call on anybody. I'm going to do it myself. Thank you. All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As a reminder to the public, anyone wishing to provide public comment during public invited to be heard must watch the live stream of the meeting and call in only when I open the meeting for public comment. Callers are not able to access the meeting at any other time. When the screen goes up, it will give you the toll-free call-in information. Starts with an 888 number. Please watch for those instructions and write down the meeting ID when it's displayed. When I say to call in, dial the toll-free number, enter the meeting ID, and when asked for participant ID, press the pound sign. The callers will have 3 minutes. And please give your address when you call in. And once done speaking, please hang up. At this time, I'd like to move on to the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the January 12th meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Waters and a second by Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring for approval of the January 12th, 2021 regular session meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. It appears that we have a 6-0 vote with no members dissenting at this time. We shall move on. Any agenda revisions and submissions of documents and motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Councilmember Christensen.
A week after George Floyd was killed by police, I asked for us to vote to bring back the chief of public safety or the chief of police to read aloud so that the city of Longmont, the citizens of Longmont know what our use of force ordinance was. And including use of drugs such as ketamine. I've asked for it repeatedly and it hasn't gotten on the agenda. So I would like us to, and we all voted to put it on the agenda. So I would like, this would only take 5 minutes. I would like this to be on a future agenda.
Yeah, Dawn, what date is that scheduled?
Harold, I'd have to look out again, but I think we scheduled it in late February.
I thought it was earlier, we'll have to find it. I know it's on a February agenda, so let me.
It is scheduled for an upcoming agenda.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other items at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the city manager's report and update on COVID-19.
So Mayor, Council, I'm gonna show you a couple of slides in terms of where we sit today with the CDPHE dial mitigation. You all can see that we're now below 300 at approximately 295.3. If you go on the website, it's probably 294. So we are moving in the appropriate direction. If you can see, compared to where we were, there's definitely more counties in the true sense of orange in terms of meeting those numbers. So making progress. When you look at the current Boulder County 2-week testing positivity rate, you can see that we're at 3.5%, which is, again, we're moving in the right direction. And then also in the hospitalization status, we're in green at 13 days of decreasing or stable admissions. When we compare that to Broomfield, Gilpin, Grand, Jefferson, Larimer, and Weld, you can see that Gilpin and Jefferson are both in orange, the rest are in red. Other than Gilpin, I think we have the lowest positivity rate and doing really well on the hospitalization position. So again, moving in the right direction. That's what you're going to see as a theme of this data. We are going to show you the wastewater data, which we're going to be interested to see what happens with that. Again, the hospital surge metrics, this is really related to level purple. You can see that, again, we're doing really well. No hospitals are reporting anticipated staffing shortages. 4 of 30 in the region are anticipating it. And then also 0 of 5 Boulder County hospitals are reporting anticipated ICU beds shortage. On the transfer capability, 1 of 5 is tight on that position. So again, doing really well. 1 of 26 report on the hospital ICU bed regional availability. So again, another good metric to look at. When you can look at the number of cases, you can obviously see that we are continuing to decrease as we move forward. This gives you a sense of those cases that were associated with long-term care facilities. You can see that from late December, really through, you've seen more cases in long-term care facilities. And so that is something that we're getting better, but it's something we're still watching. And you'll see that related to, unfortunately, the number of deaths. You can see the 5-day average is continuing to trend down. We kind of spiked up, moved down. So we're going to continue watching the data on this one. But then when we look at where Boulder County sits compared to the other metro counties in the 7-day moving average, you can see that Boulder County is at the bottom in terms of where we sit from a numbers perspective. Again, when you look at this on the cumulative rate per 100,000, Longmont's still the highest on this metric. When you then look at the number of cases, you can see that we're actually looking more similar to what it did early on compared to this range where we were generating the majority of the cases. And you can see the breakdown by age. Again, really in that 18 to 34 in terms of the majority of the cases and what we're seeing in Boulder County. When we look at COVID-19 among children, in the last 2 weeks, 0 to 4, we actually are higher in 29 cases. Relatively stable, 5 to 9. We did decrease in the 10 to 14 and then the 15 to 17. So did see an increase at this age range. Again, when you look at this trend in terms of the number of cases, the big piece is that everything's going down. We did see a slight uptick in 18 to 22, but it looks like it's leveling off and continuing, hopefully getting down like the other numbers. And when we look at the Hispanic population in number of cases, 35.4 now in the county. It is lower than it has been. And you can, this is a really good chart where you can see the number of Hispanic Latinx cases versus white non-Hispanic. And while we still are disproportionate, you're seeing that it is becoming more in line with the percentages than it was at this point in time. When we look at vaccinations, the numbers that they provided, 21,000 people in Boulder County have received their first dose. 3,900 have both doses of the vaccine. This gives you a sense of the number of people that they're able to vaccine by day. And really talking, Dan Eman and Shannon McAvaney and are working with the county on their vaccination plan. You know, really the issue right now is the limited number of vaccines. We actually have the ability to vaccinate a lot of people. When we look at the existing structure within the county, it's really just the limited vaccines. They are also working plans in terms of creating surge capacity if we get more vaccine than our ability to put out in the community. So it's supply right now. That's the big issue. When you can look at by age group, you can see that the 70 plus is the majority, but you can see as you move down in age, it has smaller percentages on this. And then when you look at COVID vaccine among 70 plus year olds by race and ethnicity, this gives you a sense of what it looks like in the county and how well they're doing. What I can tell you is this is also a source of conversation in the vaccine planning in terms of really getting into those underserved populations. And that is something that's a particular focus in all of our conversations and conversations that Dan and Shannon are part of. And then when we look at the testing, you can see that on December 1, we were at 7.6. Today, we're at 3.2. Again, good movement. This is a really good data set that shows how many tests we're performing and how many are positive. So you can still see a lot of capability of testing a lot of individuals. And then you can see where we're moving. And again, the trend is what we're looking for. Again, this is a trend by age group. You can see everything really moving in the right direction. This, I think, is it's hard to tell what it is. It's either I think it's 23 to 24, where we can see that uptick that we talked about earlier. And then this is a positivity rate by various age groups. And you can see that really where it's high is that 0 to 9, 18 to 22, and 23 to 24 compared to the other age groups. And then when we look at hospitalizations, again, this is a cumulative number. You can see that everything is in green. Med-surg beds is actually in yellow, has been right in red. And then ICU is again pretty stable at this point. This is really the good sign when you look at number of hospitalizations and where we are today in that continuing trend. It's hard to imagine that in around end of November, December, we were at that 130 mark in terms of hospitalizations in Boulder County. This is what it looks like for the state. And again, really mimicking the trend that we're seeing in Boulder County. And then finally, this is what it looks like in terms of the deaths that we've had in Boulder County. And again, orange is those associated with long-term care facilities. I am going to now show you the wastewater data. Hold on, it's giving me a glitch. There we go. So you can see on our wastewater data, are you seeing the wastewater data, the graph?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So you can see what we've really been seeing. I mean, there's some outliers in terms of the numbers we've seen, but generally this downward trend in our wastewater is actually what we've been seeing in the caseloads. What we're going to pay particular attention to in the next few days is we're seeing this now. So it sort of bounced around a little bit, but now we've had 3 testing cycles in a row where there's an increase. We're going to be watching this pretty close to see what that really means for us as a community. You know, our hope is that we see something that where it occurred here, where it sort of went up, moved, and then started trending down. But we'll be watching over the next few days because we do know that this generally means that we will see more cases in the next 7 days than we have in the previous 7 days based on this trend. So we're going to continue watching that as well, and we'll have hopefully have some more data to talk to you about next week in terms of what we're seeing as a result of our wastewater study. I know that was a quick overview of this, but generally moving in the right direction, and that's what we wanted to see. In our admin calls that we had, vaccine is still a priority. We have a lot of capability. It's really just actually having the vaccine available to give to folks. There's a lot of conversation regarding the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. What I read And what I've heard is that I think Dr. Fauci indicated that they thought within the next 2 to 3 weeks, it should move through the process. That's really going to be a big change in that A, it's another supplier, but B, it's also one dose vaccine that folks can get. And so that's where everyone's really looking at making a lot of progress. President Biden did state, I think his original goal was 1 million vaccines a day. And I think he raised that to 1.5 million in a recent statement yesterday or day before yesterday. So everybody's really focused on this. And I think there's a lot of plans that are being developed. And what I can say is there's some really good plans where if we get more doses than our system can currently handle, we've got plans to get those going via other facilities. Some of those facilities are actually in Longmont in terms of getting that surge capacity to move forward.
All right, Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Harold, thank you for that update. Specific to Longmont, can you tell us what facilities are going to be available? And as far as the marginalized communities, especially our ethnic communities, do we have sites on the east side that are walkable, that are available? Do we have also through, I guess it would be our, I don't know what organization would do it, but do we have any kind of a mobile unit to be able to go out like to the safe lot, to the homeless, to meet all those specific needs in Longmont? And I did read, and I think it was the New York Times, where President Biden is going to buy 20 million more doses. He's paying for 20 million more doses. So I think that you're right, that those vaccinations will become available, that medicine will be here. So how are we in Longmont, not necessarily Boulder County?
So, well, and so when we look at this, I will get that, we will get that plan in terms of the admin group next week. They're still finalizing it right now.
Okay.
All of those things that they're talking about, I would, at this point, anticipate the fairgrounds being a major site.
Okay.
Just because of access and moving people through it. I know we're looking at some of our facilities, and when we say we're moving through it, we've looked at a few things that they're looking at is really high ceilings, ventilation, ability to really separate and isolate folks, because you still have to have the physical distancing in this. So I'm hearing of a couple, and then this concept of really that mobile clinic is something that they're really starting to work on. Even actually, we've talked about utilizing our folks that can provide vaccinations in that mobile environment. And I know in our admin call yesterday, we're supposed to get that next week in terms of here's the plan and here's what it looks like.
Perfect. I also have one more question.
A better update.
Okay, this was from a constituent, and I think it's important. He is a retired medical person who gave shots throughout his profession. He wants to know where can they, if Longmont opens up or even Boulder County opens up to wanting more personnel, where can they sign up to volunteer? Is that being made available?
So Karen may have to help me on this one, but I forgot the name of it. It's through Boulder County Health and their health, I want to say Health Corps, but that's,
Okay.
need to contact them because that's where the volunteers go in, and they have to do all of the training because Dr. Urbina is the providing the physician oversight under this, so it falls under his license. And so that is being done through Boulder County Health. For example, even if we were going to use some of our paramedics, they have to go through their training protocol because it is under his license. And so Boulder County Health, and we will get you the name. Marika and I will get you all the name of what they need to volunteer for. I just forgot it.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Karen, did you?
So, whoops. So Harold, my other suggestion is that, the Hope Light Clinic does, I mean, so most of their providers are volunteer, retired medical providers. And so, so I would also say that that could be a great avenue for volunteerism for the person that you're speaking about. So the Hope Light Clinic.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Martin.
Actually, I think Councilmember Hidalgo Faring was first.
Okay, sorry, just, where you fall in my screen. Sorry. Councilmember Hidalgo Faring.
Thank you, Councilmember Martin. I appreciate that. So I have a few questions. One is a follow-up from Councilmember Peck's question around the vaccine and volunteers. What is the criteria if people wanted to volunteer? Do they have to, you had mentioned a training, but do they have to have medical certification prior to the training in order to be considered as a volunteer?
So I know, and I will tell you about what we've talked about in terms of repurposing our staff. So probably the biggest thing is being able to consistently serve in that function.
Mhm.
Because, as we talked about repurposing staff or even looking at facilities, it can't be the one-off. You have to be able to consistently do it on a regular basis.
Mhm.
There are then different components in this. And so what I'm saying, and most of probably the admin functions,
Mhm.
and that they're looking to other cities to provide and repurpose staff just because it's consistent. We know the systems. In terms of the healthcare providers, what they indicated to me is, at least at this point, they would like people with experience in terms of, actually giving shots versus training it up. And what you're hearing in other places, that it's a pretty short course if you need volunteers. But at
Mhm.
this point, in terms of what we have, they really want people with that experience. But we can follow up, and Marika will get that from the GIS, and we will provide you with information.
Okay, and do you feel that we have enough personnel in the event we get more vaccines? So I know, like for me, I've already put in my request as a teacher, as an educator for through Boulder County, through Kaiser, and through the district, and I haven't received any word. And so I know the vaccines aren't there for
Yeah.
us yet.
So yes, what I'm hearing in terms of, I think the number's around 20,000 a day that they have the ability to do, and that's including all the hospital systems.
Okay, but right now we just don't have the vaccines available. Okay.
Yeah, I think we requested 20,000+ and received 800 in Boulder County. And so yes, I'm hearing we have the capability, and yes, they're building it to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question, so they're still in 1B above the line.
Mm-hmm.
I am hearing that there's conversations in terms of getting ready
Mm-hmm.
statewide in terms of 1B, the below the line, which is where the educators fall in. But that's, again, down the road, because they're still 1B above the line and really focusing on 70+
Okay.
in that other category.
I guess for me, being in the trenches, like right now, our preschool and kindergarten, they're all wiped out. They're on quarantine. We have buildings where whole grade levels are in quarantine. So, just to have, I understand, we need to acquire these vaccines, but just to create this sense of urgency. So whoever's listening, whoever has whoever the powers that be, the vaccine gods, we need to start, the people who are out there in the trenches, and not just in the education field, but our grocery store workers, our people who are trying to service the daily needs of our residents, of our children, of our most frail. We need to get the vaccine in the hands of these people. It's been insane just last few weeks.
Yeah, and I'll just tell, everybody's focused on that, and we continue to make those, to send those messages, and we'll continue to do it and definitely pass it on.
Sure.
We're really, everyone's really hoping that Johnson & Johnson moves through, because you don't have all of this thing, you don't have to keep it as cold. It's easier to transport. It's one vaccination. That's really where we think we can make some moves. And then I believe AstraZeneca.
Okay.
Pfizer is coming down. So we'll let you all know.
I'm glad you mentioned the Johnson Johnson because that was the other question I had. What was the effectiveness of that particular vaccine?
So we won't know until they put their formal proposal in, and I know that was supposed to come. At least what I'm reading is I'm hearing it's as effective.
Okay.
But that'll come out before they issue the emergency approval.
Okay, and then my last question is in regard to COVID, the positivity rates affecting communities of color, and even looking at that slide with the vaccine, how disproportionately, we have, what, 5% Hispanic and even less for other communities of color who are receiving the vaccine. So to me, that is concerning. I know in the past we've talked about we see these trends, but what are we doing as a community to help address that disproportionality? And, I don't know what, I haven't really heard like a definite answer as to what have we discovered? What can we do to support? This Thursday, I am part of the National Education Association. We're going to be in a fireside chat with Dr. Fauci. So I did submit my question, that same question, to CDC. So I found out today it was accepted. So I'm hoping that I can get some answers at the national level, but bringing it down to the community, what are we doing at this level? What have you found? What can we do to best support our communities of color?
So a couple of things that have happened. So I know that Boulder County, now I'm going to talk county first and then go local. So they have they've adjusted their structure and hired some folks in terms of really working in the world of cultural brokers and social equity. And so they've begun hiring staff. And I just dropped the name of the guy who works for the county that they just hired. He lives in Longmont. Really connected with Carmen in terms of the work that we're doing. And then really it really is about connecting with our cultural brokers and getting into the community. And I'll ask Carmen to join me next week to really talk about that work more in depth, because she can give you a better sense of that. But, generally, I think what we're hearing, there's just so many issues and it's so different. It's, when we talk about things like, what have we learned? I have to work. There's Alberto. So when we did the testing sites and we heard from them, it's as basic of, I don't want to get tested because I can't afford to be sick and I need to work. But then it's really talking about what resources are available. It's also when you talk about the multi-generational households and the inability to isolate there. So then you see more cases. And Eliberto can go more in depth in this, even to the point of, it's really then just getting into communities and having the conversations. And then when you hear the national dialogue on vaccine, how people traditionally see vaccines, and there's a lot of history in that and culture related to how people receive vaccines in the past. And so it really is about that face-to-face connection. And so when we talk about the 5-star program, we really said, where can we use volunteers? It really is in that bilingual world and helping us really get out and communicate with businesses and people to try to spread the message, because I know from the folks that we have, so when I talk about Eliberto and Carmen and Adriana and the cultural brokers, we've really taxed them a lot, and it's adding capacity there to really help us communicate. That's probably something we could look to building more resources there. Eliberto?
So I'll just add a little bit. I think Harold has covered most of it, but as far as the cultural broker network, Guillermo Estrada from Boulder County has been heading up this thing called Red, the cultural brokers. Is really a social network of both formal and informal cultural brokers in the community. He's created, along with others, a resource list for immigrants, predominantly Spanish-speaking residents. And so there is a lot of work in the community, and a lot of our trusted organizations like El Comité, Intercambio, Centro Amistad in Boulder, El Paso, there's a lot of good networking happening at the organization level. So that's the good thing. But to Harold's point, it's the challenging piece is capacity, because they're also doing their, in particular our trusted institutions or trusted organizations. They're still doing the work that they're doing and trying to promote this network and provide the resources. So it is a building capacity issue. Guillermo's one person; he's doing amazing. But I think we need to continue to support those efforts. So yeah.
So I have, Eliberto, I have one question for you, and you don't have to answer right now, but you can think about it. What do
Okay.
you think you would need for the city council? What would you need of us to ensure that we can build that capacity in order to reach out people who are typically not interconnected with a lot of these organizations, these groups? So you don't have to answer now.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it, and I'll have to connect with Carmen, because really Carmen is at the forefront of that work. But I'd be happy to connect with her and come back and provide a well thought out answer, because it's a great question. But let me take it back to Carmen and come back.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My question is pretty simple. We have a lot of ways to sign up and get in the queue right now. And for the effectiveness of the distribution process, what's the best way for people to approach this? Like if your provider has a sign up, should you just use that one? Should you sign up for every portal you can reach? Should you wait to sign up until they announce that your group is getting scheduled, or should you sign up immediately? Nobody really knows the answer to those things.
So I'm trying to find this page so I can share this with you all. Hold on. So let me share the screen with you all. So if you go to Boulder County COVID-19 vaccines, so you go here and you can see where they're talking about the vaccine locations, and you have the different locations here. And it says can go to clinica.org. You have the Kaiser where you sign in and you log in on Kaiser, King Super, Safeway, Salud, CU Medical or CU Boulder Medical Services, UC Health. I think, and then you have this prioritization here. Those go to this page and sign up on everything that they have here is what I'm generally telling folks, because the reality is you don't know who's going to get the vaccine and where, and there's also a call-in number. I know they're working on trying to bring these into a common platform, but what I'm telling folks is to sign up on the platforms that are listed on this website, and sign up on all of them. Marika, I know you may be online. Are you hearing any different from the GIS at this point?
I am not, Harold.
And so go to this page, click the links, go to it. We're also putting information out in terms of the phone numbers that people can call, because we also realize the digital divide in that component, and that's getting moving and where the state's doing it. So the answer would be sign up with all of it. The other piece that I wanted to say as a follow-up to a question earlier is when we've looked at some of these other sites and really talking about 70 plus and other populations within our community, as I've had a chance to talk to those people that were evaluating sites, you really need to look at locations that are trusted within the community, in each individual community, because what's a trusted location in Longmont is going to be much different for a location in Boulder or Louisville. And so when we kind of talked about our 70+ population, our Hispanic population, you know, we really did spend a lot of time looking at the area, our facilities around Roosevelt, because it's known and trusted. And it also has access to bus system there and transportation. And so those are the things they're fine tuning now in terms of looking at that additional capacity. And I just wanted you all to know when we have those conversations, those are the things that we're talking about, because that's what's going to get us into some of the disadvantaged populations in our community.
I'd like to welcome Mayor Bagley to the meeting.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate it. So anyway, I was out of town. I was supposed to be back at 11, but my flight got delayed, and here I am. Roads were terrible, so apologize. Councilmember Christensen, thanks again, Aaron, for covering. You do a great job.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Bagley and council members. Harold, have you thought about, speaking about trusted resources, having a discussion with ministers? Many people in the Latinx community do go to church, mostly Catholic church, and if they had discussions in the church or flyers in the church, it would be, I think, a very helpful thing. And perhaps we could also send somebody to talk to Casa de la Esperanza. There are a lot of people who live there. We had a very good discussion during the kind of crisis a few years ago with DACA and different things like that. The chief of public safety and the county public defender, or, I'm sorry. Anyway, we went out there and had a very good meeting. And so that's another kind of trusted resource of where people feel comfortable. And I'm just wondering if, you know, it will require people going to where people live, where they're not taking off extra time to find out about this. Because, you know, if you're working all day long and people tell you, yeah, you got to take up some more time and take off work, and it's not going to happen. But if you do it when they're at church or when they're at their home, it makes it a little easier.
That's the mobile clinic concept that they're working on and trying to figure out. And what I'll probably do, so we get briefed Monday and then Thursday, and Thursday's typically the better briefing for us. And I know there's more information coming back to us. Let me work with Eliberto and Carmen and really pull that back for next Tuesday, because we will have a more formalized plan across the board and we can speak to those issues specifically. But I will say that is the concept of the mobile clinics actually going out and trying to do that.
Councilmember Peck.
I get one last comment because you weren't here, Mayor Bagley, so you don't know I read the comment.
Yeah, you've not commented at all, Councilmember Peck. We're all at 0. Polly's at 1. We're good to go.
So just talking about sites really fast, have you thought about using high school gyms? Those are in walkable, high schools and middle schools are in walkable neighborhoods.
They did. I know in the admin call, they did talk, that offer was made by St. Vrain Valley.
Good.
I think the challenge is that it's only a couple of days they could do it, like a Friday and a Saturday. And the piece is they need these to be able to go on a daily basis. And so again, all of it depends on the type.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that actually came up yesterday.
All right, anything else? Harold?
No, I think we're good. Again, the big piece, there's a lot of plans being made. What I would say is there's a lot of capacity in Boulder County to provide vaccinations. What we need is vaccine. And they're building even more capacity if we get enough vaccine to exceed the number that we can provide. And so there's just a lot of work being done on that right now. Obviously, the focus is the 1B above the line. And so generally, that's the second tier of some of the health providers. It's COVID-19 response personnel, and then 70+. And you really saw that number in the percentages. And so that's what they're going to continue working on. And next week, we will have a more detailed presentation on what we're doing with our cultural brokers.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, then let's go ahead. Is Jessica around?
I am.
All right, then we're going to turn the time over to you for the Longmont Economic Development Partnership quarterly update, specifically for Q4 of 2020. But so Councilmember Martin has a cat. You have something way better than the cat, and we never see it. So where's your child? Where's this beautiful baby?
I'm at my office.
All right.
Council meetings in the dining room table weren't working out. So.
All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, next time.
I will be sure. All right. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of council. I'm going to start with a quick apology. I don't actually have slides for you tonight, although I don't know how disappointed you're going to be in that. We just ran out of time to put slides together. So you all have my report in your packet and have hopefully had a chance to take a look at that. And I'll be speaking to some of the highlights of that, as well as make myself available to answer any questions that you have about the contents of the report or anything else Longmont EDP related. Part of the reason that we ran out of time is that we have been focusing much of our energy and resource on getting the 5-star certification program stood up for the county. I have some good news that our application was officially submitted to CDPHE on January 19th. I actually expect approval by the end of this week. So simultaneous to getting the application submitted and waiting on our approval from CDPHE, we are working on the infrastructure of the program so that we can hopefully begin to take applications for 5-star certification as soon as February 4th, and hopefully start to actually issue certificates, safety certificates, as soon as February 8th. So within the next couple of weeks, we expect to have that program fully up and running. We do have some significant resource needs related to that program. The number one resource need is actually people. When you talk about volunteers, we are in need of volunteers to serve and be trained, or to be trained and then serve as safety certification inspectors. So if anybody's interested in that, they can reach out to me. We have had some early conversations with some private industry folks that have expressed an interest in repurposing some of their employees and or utilizing corporate social responsibility volunteer hours for that. So we've had good response, but we can always use more.
Jessica, and people that are bilingual.
Yes, primarily. And I'm going to
get bilingual employees or volunteers is really important.
Yeah, bilingual volunteers will be very important. We also do have a financial resource need. So the program itself, we've identified funding for, and much of it, as we've talked about before, will be paid through the application fees that businesses that are able to pay will pay. But we are looking to set up a scholarship or grant fund, both for the purpose of paying that application fee for businesses who are unable, as well as to provide some resource to help businesses that can't afford to pay for any changes or safety mitigation factors that they'll have to correct in order to receive their certification. So we're going to set up a fund for that as well, so that anyone will be able to contribute to that. We've had great response to our early request for interest, both on the side of businesses interested in certifying, as well as businesses saying, yes, I can pay for my certification, and I'd also like to contribute to somebody else's certification. So we've seen some kindness, which really gave us the idea to reach out to the larger community to see if there are others that are interested in supporting businesses less fortunate than their own to be able to get this certification. We really think it's, and continue to hear that it's going to be a lifeline for a number of businesses within our hardest hit industries. I do want to speak to the equity piece. The very first kind of subcommittee task force of our administrative committee, our required administrative committee for the 5-star program, was an equitable deployment task force. And so that consists of Carmen Ramirez, as well as Marisa from my team and Ricardo from the Latino Chamber of Commerce. And they're really working on building an infrastructure for equitable deployment of our program, including the use of cultural brokers and addressing some of the cultural challenges that we know that we'll face in getting into businesses that maybe don't know to trust us or to trust the safety certification program. So I think it will be a valuable conversation to have to see how we can possibly lift and shift that infrastructure that will be built through this program to some of the other things that you're talking about, vaccine deployment and improved testing. So we'll be happy to participate in that conversation. All right, so with that, I will get into, as I mentioned, some of the highlights of our the 2020 Q4 report that you've been provided. Of course, much of 2020 was consumed by COVID-19 response and recovery, and that business response team made up of our Advanced Longmont partner organizations does continue to convene and collaborate on a number of efforts. Certainly the 5-star program has been an all hands on deck initiative. We're also working with the Longmont Downtown Development Authority and the Longmont Chamber on the potential development of an online platform. We're calling it Etsy for Longmont businesses. Basically, we've had an offer from, well, we actually reached out, and a local software development firm, Realware, has agreed to donate the development and ongoing maintenance and management of an online platform. We're just trying to assess interest of our local businesses right now in participating in something like that. But we're ready to go and get that developed and launched, assuming there is interest. We also continue to support businesses and their ability to connect with all of the other resources that are available to them, from grant programs at the local level to the federal new round of PPP funding, ERC credits, all of the things that are available to them. We continue to be a connecting point from our business community to, and really all of the partner organizations continue to be a connecting point from our business community to those resources. I'm going to talk really quick because it's in the report about Longmont EDP funding, and certainly funding for nonprofits has been challenging over the course of the last year, and Longmont EDP is no different. And so just wanted to speak to what you see in the report, which is that from a total revenue perspective, Longmont EDP in 2020 was down about 5% from the previous year. And our private sector investment or private contribution was down about 28%, which we anticipated. We were actually anticipating or projecting closer to 35 to 38%. And so 28% down, which, while not great, is certainly better than what we were originally projecting, and still up 6% from where we were at in 2018. And I do want to just make a point of saying thank you to City Council and to our city leaders for continuing to support the organization and the work that we do, because that's really been critical to our ability to have even been a part of response and recovery for COVID, while also continuing to do the normal workload of an economic development organization like ours. Going into the talent objectives section of the report, our national marketing campaign continues for talent attraction. 2020 was really about launching the campaign as an awareness campaign. So starting to generate the following and the audience of talented individuals across the country that we would like to consider Longmont and the career opportunities that we offer here. Looking forward to 2021, we'll be really focused on how do we convert that kind of top of funnel awareness into a more bottom of funnel marketing funnel transactional benefit for our community and for the businesses that still have labor shortages and need to identify talent. We've had over 3 million impressions on that marketing campaign. And so really think that the time is right now for us to start to work on transitioning that into really more transactional benefit. I'll also mention the Longmont Start to Home program that we have talked about a number of times, which is really our effort to mitigate, reduce, eliminate some of the barriers to entry to homeownership for our local labor force, understanding that we can impact the price of homes. So the Start to Home program, we've had 6 completed transactions today. So 6 people have entered into home ownership that may not have otherwise been able to, if not for those program. And we expect that number to go up to 15 by the end of February. And we now have over 100 people registered with the site in pursuit of home ownership here in the Longmont and the immediate region. One of my favorite statistics from the Start to Home program is that the majority of those transactions are in that $300,000 to $500,000 price range. So really hitting the target that we want to hit, which is the largest percentage of the workforce pursuing workforce housing opportunities here in Longmont. From a talent pipeline development perspective, you'll see in the report that much of that work, like a lot of our Advanced Longmont 2.0 work, has been deferred to 2021. However, we did successfully complete and submit a grant to the Economic Development Administration in partnership with the St. Vrain Valley School District that if we are successful with, that was submitted in October, if we're successful in winning that grant, will help to fund a partnership between Longmont EDP and the school district around innovative approaches to work-based learning and engaging private industry in work-based learning opportunities. We expect to hear by the end of Q1 of this year whether or not we've been successful in winning that grant. Talk a little bit about the North Metro Enterprise Zone, which has also been a great resource. We've seen more use of that program this year than we have in previous years. I think people are looking for any source of either cost savings or capital infusions to support their businesses. So we actually had 83 businesses take advantage of tax credits through the Enterprise Zone program. So over $700,000 in tax credits claimed amongst those businesses. So an average of about $8,500 per business in tax savings through the North Metro Enterprise Zone program. Our prospect pipeline remains active. We worked with 45 prospects, primary industry prospects for either expansion or relocation. Though I will say in 2020, we can't check a lot of those off as wins, not because they're not still active or not because they've chosen not to locate in Longmont. There's just a much longer timeline and companies suddenly have a lot more patience for some of the decisions in terms of where to locate and even what those locations are going to look like, considering the potential, all the possible theories around what the future of work is going to look like, especially from an office environment. So we had a handful of primarily retention and expansion projects that resulted in either the retention of many jobs or the creation of dozens rather than the hundreds of jobs that we would normally see in a year from relocation and expansion projects. But we continue, again, to have a very active pipeline that has a lot of positive potential for 2021 and potentially out to 2022. We have completed the real estate market assessment that we did in partnership with the Longmont Downtown Development Authority. We'll be presenting that to our leadership over the next couple of weeks, both the Downtown Development Authority leadership, my board of directors, my leadership council, before we release that publicly. Although we're happy to share it with you all if anybody's interested in seeing that, or you can come to our February 8th board meeting where we'll be presenting that information. On the entrepreneur side, with Innovate Longmont, Innovate Longmont continues to actively support local entrepreneurs and startups, and throughout the year accepted 13 companies into the accelerator. 7 of those have graduated. The other 6 are still actively going through that accelerator program. With Advanced Longmont 2.0, as you know, we've hired a collective impact coordinator, Marisa Bailongian, who, and with a very intentional effort to start to reconvene the working groups and push forward some of the strategic initiatives of Advanced Longmont 2.0. You have all been invited to, and hopefully many of you will be able to participate in our annual Advanced Longmont Leadership Summit on January 29th. Historically, that's really been focused on the strategy itself. This year, we're shifting that to a focus on the collective impact framework and how we operate within that collective impact framework and the implementation of Advanced Longmont 2.0. So we're kind of calling it Collective Impact 101. So hopefully many of you will be able to join us for that. So then when we look at the broader economic overview from a jobs perspective, there are currently an estimated 54,545 jobs in the Longmont area. To remind you, we look at an area that is a bit bigger than the city of Longmont itself, because most of this data is available only at a zip code level. So we have to incorporate all of these zip codes that are in Longmont, but 54,545 jobs, which actually represents a 0.4% increase in the number of jobs across all industries in the city of Longmont over the previous year. November unemployment in Longmont, which is the most recent data that's available, set at 5.8%. which is in comparison to 6.4% for the state of Colorado and 6.7% for the country as a whole. Of course, different industry sectors have experienced this pandemic very differently. And so when we break that down, some of the numbers related to specific industries, especially those most heavily impacted, aren't nearly as positive as what I just reported would make it sound. And so just to give you an understanding of that, within our targeted industries, our targeted industry clusters of smart manufacturing, food and beverage, business catalyst, and knowledge creation and deployment, saw a 0.2% increase in employment compared to the national negative or 0.4% loss in employment across those industries. So relatively good news. Slow growth, but growth still in the number of jobs within those industries. But then when we look at the most heavily impacted industries by the COVID-19 pandemic and the public health requirements associated, our restaurant industry here in Longmont saw a 9% reduction in jobs in comparison to 8.5% across the country. Our retail sector saw a loss of 2.4% in jobs as compared to 3.4% across the US, and our personal services sector, 4.1% job loss versus 5.27% loss across the US. So obviously a number of industries that we have a very strong concentration of here in Longmont severely impacted. One of the initiatives that we're looking at through our Advanced Longmont 2.0 plan and the collective impact framework is recognizing that some of those jobs are not coming back for a very long time, if ever. How do we help to transition those displaced workers into some of these industries that continue to see a very serious labor shortage, like the construction industry, like some of our manufacturing industries here locally. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at in 2021 and beyond. And with that, I'll also remind you all, you should have received a invitation to our 2021 Economic Summit event, which will be virtual this year over the course of 2 mornings, February 25th and 26th. I will have slides then, and we'll give a very detailed impact report as well as forward look at 2021 and beyond as part of that event. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
All right, Dr. Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. Jessica, lots of data and a great report, even without slides. I am curious, as you've spent so much time and effort with your membership, your investors, to work your way through and work them through the pandemic. At some point, your conversation, and it may already have turned towards what will be the differentiators in the post-pandemic future for communities that recover quickly, that are resilient, that can sustain their recovery, and what role there might be for their elected officials, or none, to play or none, not to play, in that future and in that recovery. Is there a perspective you have on this? Is this a conversation that's active? And any part of that would be, would any part of that be presented or facilitated in your conference activity coming up? Just curious, what should we be thinking about as elected officials as we anticipate the post-pandemic future, and what part we play to help with differentiating Longmont from all others?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Waters. Thank you for that question. I don't know if exactly the answer you're looking for, but one of the things that we've seen, and not to suggest that you're looking for a specific answer, but don't know that I'm answering exactly the question that you're asking, but one of the things that we've seen as kind of a silver lining of 2020, all things 2020, has been this higher level of collaboration and alignment across organizations, both out of necessity of limited resources as a result of the pandemic and some of the fiscal impacts of that on our organizations and certainly on our municipalities. When I talk about collaboration and alignment, it's been across organizations here locally in Longmont, but also across communities in the region. So as part of the Northern Colorado region, the NOCO Ready, which I can't remember it's an acronym, but it's the Northern Colorado Recovery Initiative. Has been a collaboration amongst communities all across Northern Colorado. The work that we've done with the Boulder Economic Council and the Boulder Chamber on the 5-star program, continued strengthening of regional efforts through the Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation. And I think one of the things that we would like to see happen, and we've heard is going to be necessary both from private industry as well as we just know because of the fiscal limitations that we face as a result of what will be a slow recovery from this related economic development downturn, is stronger alignment and stronger partnership between the public and private sectors. We have to recognize that our biggest challenges, as well as our greatest opportunities as a community and as a region, aren't going to be answered by the public sector. They aren't going to be answered by the private sector alone. They're going to have to be answered by strong alignment, partnership, and cohesion between the public and private sectors who both share the same interest in the recovery of our local economy.
All right, Jessica, thank you very much. We appreciate all your work and effort. And Councilmember Christensen, was that a wave or was that a, no? Okay, that was just a friendly wave. All
I
right.
appreciate it.
All right, great. Thank you, Jessica. All right, let's go on then to first call public invited to be heard. If you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and take Councilmember Martin.
Oh, I was just raising my hand to address the consent agenda.
Oh, well, why don't we do that after public invited to be heard, and then we'll come back. All righty. So let's take a 3 to 4 minute break.
All right, folks, for those of you who are watching the live stream, now is the time for you to call in if you wish to speak to City Council. You're going to want to dial our toll-free number 1-888-788-0099. Again, 1-888-788-0099. When prompted, you're going to enter the meeting ID 828-2373-9212. Again, 828-2373-9212. When it asks for a participant ID, press the pound sign. When you're led into the meeting, you're going to want to mute the live stream. You'll be entered into the waiting room and we will admit you into the meeting. So again, there is a delay on the live stream. You're going to want to listen to the instructions through your telephone.
All right, we back?
All right, give me just a minute. Let's make sure that we get caught up on our live stream and the screen
Okay.
Shows us back in session here. And there it goes. I believe everyone else, we're missing Councilmember Christensen, it looks like. For those callers who are now part of the meeting, please mute the live stream. We will be calling your phone number by the last 3 digits. I will ask you to unmute. Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. All right, Mayor, I'm ready to begin. Are you?
Yep, we're ready.
Okay.
How many people do we have?
6, looks like.
Perfect.
1, 2, 3. Yep, 6. All right, the first caller, your phone number ends in 271. 271, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Are you there? There you are. Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hi, you may begin.
Okay. My name is Diana Chavez. My address is 1850 Princess Drive, Longmont. And I wanted to comment tonight. I've sent emails, so I'm going to comment again about the 5-star certification program. And I continue to be opposed to it, as I'm opposed to any further government type of overreach into our businesses, small businesses and such. I think that based on my observations and what I've been experiencing and paying attention to, I just don't see any valid reason to incorporate more hoops for our business owners to jump through. You know, the virus, although real, has obviously a better than 99% survival rate, no different than the flu that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years. And I just don't see any valid reason for the government to be involved in one more aspect of running a business, opening a restaurant, and getting back to normal. And wanted to let you know that I am opposed to this contract with businesses. Thank you.
All right, our next caller, your number ends in 488. 488, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Okay, my name is Scott Cunningham. I live on South Narcissus in Denver. I would like to address the council this evening on the subject of Longmont's published goal of achieving 100% renewable energy by 2030. I suggest that if you want to reach this laudable goal, you have absolutely no time to waste, and you must begin this important pilot immediately. In fact, I suggest that you invite without delay a renowned team of renewable energy consultants that I'm familiar with to present their proven plan to make Longmont's own Habitat for Humanity community this region's first 100% renewable energy pilot. This pilot would resemble the neighborhood of Basalt Vista on the western slope, a renewable project led by the local Habitat chapter in cooperation with Holy Cross Energy and NREL. Each home has an 8-kilowatt rooftop solar panel system with storage batteries with a wired control system that automatically enables houses within the neighborhood to share power in real time, creating reliable energy for everyone within the community. It bears pointing out that the bidirectional controllers utilized in Basalt are much different from the more limited AMI smart meters, which provide only a metering function, but no means of distribution or storage. As is invariably the case with emerging bleeding edge technological innovations, Longmont would have really no hope of implementation of a system like this apart from securing access to insiders to the field with demonstrated ability to complete a project of this magnitude. Fortunately, I can provide you access to a small group of seasoned practitioners within this field holding a track record of successful project completions who can place your goal of getting to 100 by 2030 within reach. In summary, for the first time in human history, we possess the tools to reliably generate, store, and distribute energy directly from our environment without the scourge of environmental pollution and without health and safety risks. I suggest that as custodians of Longmont's future, you harness this historic opportunity by inviting this elite team of renewable energy consultants to present our detailed process to give Longmont the region's first 100% renewable pilot at your first opportunity. Thank you very much.
All right, our next caller, your phone number ends in 499. 499, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are.
Hello. Hi. This is Doe Kelly of Barberry Drive, Longmont. Good evening to you. We've been in a month-long conversation on the pros and cons of rolling out advanced metering infrastructure or wireless smart meters here at Longmont City Council, and a discussion on whether or not non-ionizing radiation poses health risks and whether or not wireless tech broadcast over microwave frequencies poses health and security risks, among other. And although this wireless threat, as many of us directly experience it, affects all biological life, human children are shown to be particularly at risk, and kids are increasingly being willfully exposed, even addicted to wireless tech from an early age to their detriment. And yet, since 1996, the Federal Communications Commission has remained entrenched in its position that biological harm occurs only where there are thermal effects. 24 years on from those antiquated rules and standards, science shows this to be patently false. Today, we have some very good breaking news on this topic, at least from my perspective. Yesterday, oral arguments in a landmark case against the FCC were heard in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. The lawsuit brought by the Children's Health Defense, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s organization, in concert with the Environmental Health Trust, headed by Dr. Deborah Davis, Nobel Co-Laureate, and various other plaintiffs, including Fort Collins resident Virginia Farver, a name you all know, seeks to adjudicate whether the FCC need reevaluate its 1996 rules to potentially include damage caused by non-ionizing radiation that is found in cell phones, Wi-Fi, and wireless smart meters, and many other wireless devices. An article from the Kennedy's CHD states, "The judges asked excellent questions and showed in-depth knowledge of the case. The Honorable Judge Henderson, a chemical engineer by training, told the FCC, 'I'm inclined to rule against you,' a rare and strong statement from a judge. The Honorable Judge Millett consistently pushed the FCC to answer why the FCC and/or FDA didn't review the evidence on non-cancer effects of wireless technology, why they addressed only cell phones when there's evidence on effects from various other devices and infrastructure, and why they didn't address the cumulative effects from the chronic exposure of numerous devices. This reporting should give City Council pause. With an impending wireless smart meter rollout, does Longmont really want to gamble its $16 million AMI budget on this? A very real potential spanner in the works. The ruling from the DC court should come in 4 to 8 months. Will they remand these antiquated rules back to the FCC for a long overdue do-over? Stay tuned. Thank you for your time.
All right, our next caller, your phone number ends in 648. I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are. Can you hear me?
I can.
You may begin.
Good evening. My name is Paige Lewis, and I live at 805 Nelson Park Lane. I'm calling to strongly encourage your support for sustaining the ice rink and the associated programs at least through February and if possible through the regular season ending in mid-March. The ice pavilion and the associated hockey and ice skating programs for us have always been a really unique Longmont resource, and that has been particularly true during this COVID time when opportunities for recreation are so much more limited. My son participates in the youth hockey program at the Ice Pavilion, and I really can't overstate how valuable that program has been for keeping him active in a safe and healthy environment this winter. The program leads really have done a tremendous job adapting the program to keep it going despite limitations and the need for a lot of adjustments. As a family, we also enjoy going to open skate and have so appreciated having that option available. I understand and support the city's need to be fiscally responsible, and in this case, based on conversations I've had with other families that are associated with the hockey program, I believe that much of the $25,000 to $32,000 cost indicated in the staff memo could be covered through additional registration fees through the hockey program, along with additional private rental that could further supplement this. And there may be other external resources as well to help with the cost. Ultimately, I think it's likely that only a small amount, if any, of the council's discretionary funds would be needed to sustain this truly valuable resource, while the benefit to the community would be tremendous. I'm sure that during COVID, the city has had to make other difficult decisions about maintaining recreation resources, such as the Recreation Center and Centennial Pool going, despite the challenges of generating revenue as in previous years. But I hope you will do that for this unique resource and allow it to continue at least through February for the benefit of Longmont kids and families, including mine. Thank you very much for your consideration. I really appreciate it.
All right, our next
Sorry,
caller.
I thought it was 6. Go ahead.
We have 2 more. The next caller, your phone number ends in 700. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Bagley and City Council members. My name is Shelley Deerking. I'm the Executive Director of St. Benedict Health and Healing Ministry. Our address is 655 Aspen Ridge Drive in Lafayette. We're a nonprofit organization that provides free healthcare clinics in Boulder County. And my purpose in calling in tonight is, one, to share a bit of information about who we are, but also to appeal to the City Council and to the Health and Human Services Advisory Board to please include us in this round of funding. We were one of only a handful of organizations who were notified we were receiving $0 in this round of the Health and Human Services funding. And I'm appealing to you because we need your support to be able to deliver on our comprehensive COVID-19 vaccination initiative. So before I get into that, a little bit about us. St. Benedict Health and Healing Ministry was founded in 2003, and we have been providing free clinics for the uninsured, the underinsured, the homeless, and undocumented in Boulder County all of these years. In the city of Longmont, more than half of the patients that we see live in the city of Longmont, and we partner with the Our Center and with Hope currently. We have over 30 volunteer licensed professional clinicians providing care on a weekly basis. Those include physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners, physical therapists, and EMTs. And we provide an array of services, everything from blood pressure checks and glucose checks to treating acute illnesses and wound care on a regular basis. This fall, we also did flu vaccines, and we are registered with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to be a COVID-19 vaccine provider. We have a mobile clinic unit that we have acquired in the past year and already put into service, and we are ready to get out there and vaccinate. So why are we important in this system of what Boulder County is planning? We're important because we already serve the folks that are underrepresented in the current state's vaccination plan. And that's what you folks have been seeing, which are the ethnic and racial disparities and among the homeless. And these folks have higher risk to developing severe disease from COVID-19 due to poor health and nutrition and chronic conditions such as hypertension, heart disease, lung disease, and so forth. When you were talking earlier about COVID-19 vaccinations, we're going to be able to help get folks vaccinated because we see them every week and they trust us, and we've already built a rapport. We're going to register people on the spot. They don't have to have an appointment in advance. We're going to be out in the neighborhoods where we normally go and add sites during our vaccination initiative to reach even more folks. We already go to the churches and where folks are receiving their soup kitchen lunches, at the Hour Center where they're getting their food boxes. And so we're there and we're ready to provide those vaccinations. But in order to do that, we need your help and we need your funding. We know that this is going to be a prolonged vaccination period. It's going to require boosters against various strains that pop up and revaccinations. And we're not a pop-up clinic. We're somebody who's been solid in the community for 17 years. And we want to continue to deliver on that and just need your help. So thank you for the opportunity to share information. And we ask you to consider us. Thank you.
All right, our last caller, your phone number ends in 702. 702, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you are. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, you may begin, sir. Please state your name and address for
thank
the
you very-
record.
Sure, my name is Paul Sakura. I live at 3651 Clover Creek Lane in Longmont. I too was calling to talk about the ice hockey rink at the pavilion in Longmont. My daughter plays in the midget league over there, and we discussed in the previous meeting that a majority of the parents were looking to fund or pay the difference to extend the season, and that would actually, help cover the cost to keep the ice pavilion open at least until the end of March. I know there was a lot of discussion about that causing a ripple effect or opening Pandora's box about maybe other sports not being able to stay open at the rec center for their activities. But, we kind of thought that if they were willing to pay the difference to have their seasons extended, then perhaps that would work out well for them as well. That's all I have, and thank you very much.
Mary, that was the last caller.
All right, thank you. So let's go on then with the consent agenda. Let's read it first, and then Councilmember Martin, I'll call on you.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 9A is ordinance 2021-10, a bill for an ordinance repealing and reenacting Chapter 15.02.080D and amending Chapter 15.04.030D 23 and Chapter 15.10.010E of the Longmont Municipal Code on short-term rentals. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for February 9th, 2021. 9B is ordinance 2021-11, a bill for an ordinance of conditionally approving the vacation of 11 right-of-way and utility easements within the planned North Star subdivision generally located north of Plateau Road and east of Mount Audubon Drive. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for February 9th, 2021. 9C is resolution 2021-10, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement among the city, Louisville Police Department, Boulder Police Department, University of Colorado Police Department, Lafayette Police Department, Netherland Police Department, Ward Marshal, and the Boulder County Sheriff's Office for the Memorandum of Understanding for Law Enforcement Response. 9D is Resolution 2021-11, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement among the city, the 20th Judicial District Attorney, and the law enforcement agencies in Boulder County for the Memorandum of Understanding to continue to participate in the Boulder County investigation team to investigate officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths involving peace officers. 9E is Resolution 2021-12, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement among the city, the 19th Judicial District Attorney, and the law enforcement agencies in the 19th Judicial District for the protocol governing the critical incident response team. 9F is Resolution 2021-13, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and Fort Collins Utilities for, for electric peak demand notification. And 9G is approval of Housing and Human Services Advisory Board recommendation to fund 2 projects from the 2021 Affordable Housing Funds available.
We're going to go with Councilmember Martin, then we're going to go with Councilmember Christensen, then we're going to go with Councilmember Peck. And if Dr. Waters wants to say something, I thought I saw a hand. Nope. Okay. And then when you're done talking, just speak up.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I would like to pull item F, which is R 2021-13.
Okay. Councilmember Christensen?
I would like to pull item A, which is ordinance 2021-10.
So A and F, Councilmember Peck?
I'd like to pull item 9G.
You're gonna have to start taking notes. A, F, and G. Would you like to make a motion, Joe?
Yes, I would like to move the consent agenda minus items 9A, 9G, and 9F.
Second.
All right.
Second.
Go ahead, Councilmember Christensen.
I just seconded.
All right, then let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, consent agenda passes unanimously. Let's go on to ordinances on second reading and public hearings on any matter. Let's go ahead and take a brief 3-minute break to allow people to get into the queue should they want to speak at the public hearings. So that said, if you are on the line, or if you are not on the line but want to get on the line, we're going to take 3 minutes to allow anyone who wants to speak at the reading of the second ordinances and express your views or thoughts or questions during the public hearing. Now is the time. Thank you. All right. We got anybody?
Mayor, we do not. Give me just a minute, let the live stream catch up.
Okay.
Because it's still displaying the slide. That'll give council time to get back. And you should be good.
All right. All right, let's go on with ordinance 2021-05, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021. Any questions or concerns or comments from council? No, seeing none. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this particular matter. Can we have a motion, please? Councilmember Waters.
I'll move ordinance 2021-05.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Dr. Waters, seconded by Councilmember Christensen. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, ordinance 2021-05 passes unanimously. Item 10B, ordinance 2021-06, a bill for an ordinance approving the Modern West Concept Plan Amendment, generally located north of Nelson Road, east of Airport Road, south of Rogers Road, and west of Anderson Street. Is there any questions from council? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter since nobody called in. Can we have a motion, please? Councilmember Waters?
I see Brian is turned on his camera.
Do you want to say?
I think we have some folks here from NREL or the Rocky Mountain Institute. I do have some questions, and I'm interested in aspects of that project.
Then that's fine. If you've got questions, let's go ahead and do it. So, Dr. Waters, go ahead and ask your questions.
Well, Brian, I'd be curious, given NREL and the Rocky Mountain Institute's roles in this project, to get a little bit more information. I read the materials. I know there's a lot of attachments. But I didn't find how their work is being funded. And if I start there and understand how their work is being funded in this project, I may have another question or two.
So Mayor and Councilmember Waters, I don't have a presentation this evening, but I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have. I know David Slater, the airport manager, is also available if you have questions for staff. Barb Brunk is here this evening, as well as there's other representatives from the applicant, as well as representatives from Rocky Mountain Institute, as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab, to respond to any questions that council has. And so with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Barb and see if she wants to make a few preliminary remarks, and then we kind of go from there.
I guess the only thing that'd be great, but Dr. Waters, do you have any specific questions that you want to ask? Because
yeah, well, my specific question was, it looks like they're playing significant roles. Is that funded by the developer, or is there another funder of the work that NREL and Rocky Mountain Institute will do in this project?
Right. So I get exactly. So what I want to do is let's address that question, but I don't want an impromptu presentation, if that makes sense. So if whoever's going to answer that question, let's do it. But there's no need, unless there's a question from council, to talk about it other than the questions. But go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Barb Brunk, Resource Conservation Partners, Box 1522, Longmont. In deference to your comments, we are going to forego our presentation. I hope that you've all had a chance to see the video presentation, because in the video, both Kara Carmichael and Shanti Pless talk about their role in the project. So we were going to ask you to show the video this evening, but I get from your conversation that that's not on your list. So what I would like to do is ask first Shanti and then Kara to talk about how they're integrated into the project. And the short answer is yes, they are being funded by the developer, and they have their own work plan that brings them to the table in their goals for their organization. So I'm going to ask First, Shanti, if you could speak to Dr. Waters' question, and then we'll ask follow with Kara.
Sure. Happy to have a few comments there. Yeah, Shanti Pless. I'm a researcher at NREL. I'm in the Communities and Urban Sciences Research Group. And so my day job funded through the Department of Energy is to do research in zero energy communities, zero energy development, how these developments can integrate with utilities, with all the stakeholders to deliver on the promise of 100% renewables for communities like this. And so that's what I do as a researcher, right? And so where projects like the Modern West are available for us to participate in, we engage because it is well aligned with the research goals that we have. And so we can really understand the real barriers that are out there in the industry, and then document those and try to solve those for the greater, all the other development that is happening around the United States with similar goals.
Kara.
Hi, Kara Carmichael. I'm a principal in RMI's buildings practice, and I'm really excited about this project, I have to say. RMI, we don't typically get involved in developments or consulting arrangements like this. We are operating as a fee-for-service consultant to the developer. But as Barb said, we have a larger scaling plan, and we really hope through our involvement to make this project a lighthouse model for grid interactive buildings and communities, and take this model and scale it elsewhere. So we're fairly selective on what kinds of projects we get involved in, but I see real potential for this project to impact others across the US. So we're not only really excited to make this a shining example in itself, but we want to help other developments replicate the successes.
So Mayor Bagley, can I ask one follow-up then?
Oh, absolutely. And then we're going to go with, after this, we're going to go with Councilmember Christensen, then Councilmember Peck.
Yeah, just one more, just in terms of dissemination. If this is an R&D initiative for RMI and for NREL, the developers funding the work, will there be a dissemination plan or education and public outreach effort as you learn your way forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I would add, I think it's going to start at the beginning of the project, really in shaping, kind of putting the right bones in place so that it can get carried throughout the development. And then a period at the end of kind of reflecting on what worked and what we maybe need to shift and do better.
Go ahead, Polly, go ahead. And then Joan, just chime in once she's done.
Okay, this is a question for both Kara and Shanti. Because you have a nice big piece of land, there's a great potential to use geothermal, which is such as was used at the Kestrel development in Lafayette. Will you be doing any of that on this project?
I think, ground source heat pump systems are certainly a key technology that's going to advance decarbonization. So it's absolutely kind of on the short list of key technologies that we're going to be looking into.
Okay, I'm going to chime in, Mayor. So I'm getting a lot of texts from people who are very unhappy that we're not showing the video. They are saying this is exactly why they tuned in, because that we have a large population that's interested in green buildings. So I am asking that we please see that video.
And that's fine. All I was saying is that staff did not have a presentation, and I just didn't want to have an impromptu presentation. But if there's a member of council that has questions, comments, or wants more information, that's why we're here. So why don't we go ahead and show the video for Councilmember Peck and the rest of council.
Thank you.
Rest of council.
Thank you.
And my overall, and I always say this to developers, if you're on second reading, a lot of times just developers make it more difficult than it needs to be. So you just, I'm just saying, I'm trying to help you, meaning here we are now talking about the project. So here we go.
Thank you.
Mayor, give me just a sec.
You can design and build an amazingly beautiful architectural masterpiece, and if there is no human element and soul invested into that, you feel an emptiness. All of the different building types and experiences I've had for going on 30 years here, it's all being culminated into this project. Modern West is a new way to do land development. It brings in a mix of uses, commercial, industrial, living for art, play, expression, home.
The intent and the goal of Modern West is to provide flexibility and opportunity to use spaces that you wouldn't traditionally use. We were really trying to capture some of this maker entrepreneurial spirit. We want to bring some of that old industrial quality in spaces that are more natural feeling. Big openings, positioning trees, framing views to the mountains, getting to interact with the seasons.
This project was really interesting from the beginning because I've worked with a lot of developers, and Derek is a special type of developer. He's a very intentional person in everything he does. He's really engaged in the Longmont community because he lives there, and he's concerned about the future for his kids, where they're going to grow up and live.
Our partnership with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and Rocky Mountain Institute will help us put sustainability at the forefront. They're a group of the brightest minds with building science in the world of innovation.
Maybe too nerdy. Cost-effective decarbonization, it sounds like some kind of horror movie. Rocky Mountain Institute is excited. We're playing a couple critical roles on the Modern West project. We don't get involved in a huge range, but really focused projects that are pushing the bounds of innovation. The Modern West team is composed of the biggest nerds in the energy space. And so our goal really is to put all of the right pieces in the right order so that the sustainability part is just embedded in the fabric of the development. The building sector is the single largest contributor of CO2 emissions in the world right now. A big part of our role is integrating all of these technologies and concepts and ideas in conjunction with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and making them cost effective.
So I've been at NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, for 20 years. I get to work on projects that are really moving the industry forward, and Modern West is one of those. It's going above and beyond where most developments at this stage go. NREL represents an objective, science-based, third-party participant. What Modern West is attempting to do around zero-energy communities is well aligned with our research trying to deploy and demonstrate large-scale net zero developments around the U.S. The way we look at net zero energy is a set of buildings that produce more on-site renewable energy than they use from the utility over the course of a year. In places like Longmont, where we have over 300 days a year of sunshine, we can take advantage of that to be our primary energy producing resource. And a lot of the research that's happening is how to best integrate those solutions into the grid. Because if everyone put solar on their building in the middle of the day, the utility would not be able to absorb all that extra renewable energy. So having a small municipal utility that will work with developments like this as an active partner is a key opportunity for this type of project. Projects like this for the state are critical to prove that it can be done.
And we have to figure out how to do it affordably.
Studies have shown that net zero energy doesn't cost more upfront if it's done right.
We've been learning lessons about live work for a while now. We find that if people have a space to go, like a maker space or a collaborative space, then they'll go there to work as well, and it's more of a communal effort.
With our live work row homes, we want to create a space where a micro business can thrive.
So we thought it would be a great idea to start to provide these industrial bays that are a little bit bigger than something you would find traditionally.
All of this commercial and light industrial use envelops the residential portion of the site.
From a utility perspective, the mixed-use amenities that it has on site, they're quite complementary in when they use energy over the course of the day.
The live work component also helps build community. When you have artists and entrepreneurs and makers living together, it creates a spirit of vibrancy and aliveness.
You think there's not a place like this in the region. It's all about the community here. You want your privacy, but you want to be part of a community. So we have multifamily buildings. They're all connected by these green spaces and pathways, a more pedestrian-friendly environment. And so the Container Collective itself is about creating a space to gather. We were able to take this really narrow strip and integrate these two ideas, tiny homes and community garden, a shared common interest.
You oftentimes don't see art woven into projects. So that's where Modern West is unique as well. It's more on a human level.
The materials are going to be pretty raw in nature: concrete, steel, and wood.
we can actually design buildings specifically for certain age groups.
We want to appeal to Generation Z all the way up to baby boomers.
The Modern West site meets a lot of the guiding principles that are laid out in the Envision Longmont plan.
And that's kind of where we found our alignment with what Longmont's trying to do.
Affordable housing, we're going to create economic development, green space. The idea is to preserve what's succeeding in Longmont right now and to provide direction for the future. Creation of smaller production facilities is a need that Longmont sees.
How can we leverage the opportunities in this community to support Longmont Power's goals of clean, reliable energy? The grid in the US, there's a lot of municipal utilities that are asking the exact same questions. How can we decarbonize our grid and our buildings in unison?
Modern West sits just east of Vance Brand Airport, and we're on a flight path. We have to be mindful of that relationship and partner with the airport. We've actually designed our buildings to relate to the air traffic.
With the intention being that everybody that lives and works in this community is going to celebrate the airport and not think of it as a nuisance.
Anytime you have lots of solar systems by an airport, it's always a challenge, right? Concerns about glare from planes being able to see the runway. That being said, you can do modeling to prove when that would happen and line that up with where the sun is, where the solar is, what type of film the solar panels have.
Most of the air traffic is in a landing pattern, so it's more of a quiet relationship than a takeoff. So it's actually pretty enjoyable to be sitting there and watching a plane fly over.
We're working on the fringe of innovation here. This is a place that I would want to live, that I want my kids to live. And this is a place that really fosters the sustainability values that I cherish.
We're hoping that Modern West becomes a pilot project for new ways to design and develop. But I want to feel that. It adds a level of human connection and soul.
All right, Joan, I'm going to turn the time back over to you. Do you have any follow-up comments or questions?
No questions, but I am glad we watched this because it did answer some of my concerns about the airport and the way they aligned it. And without this, I wouldn't have understood, since there was no concept plan outlined in our packet as such. So thanks for letting that happen.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I see Don Burchett has become invisible. Are you still there, Don?
And while he's getting back on, Councilmember Peck, I just run the meeting. You ask for the info, I'll be glad to throw it up.
What I wanted to ask about was we've had a couple of comments about the impact on the Nelson Road traffic. And, you know, I want people to drive cars less. But my question is, was the housing that is, you know, the live-work housing that is central to the development factored in terms of what the impact on the impact on the surrounding arteries would be, because I would think that would lessen the impact quite a bit.
I'll take a stab at that.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So as part of the concept plan amendment, there was a traffic impact analysis that was done. And it identified, potential and future improvements that'd be required. Obviously, the primary access initially with development of this property will be to the north to Mountain Brook Drive. That'll connect to the east to Anderson Street. That'll then connect down to Nelson Road, but then also to the west over to Rogers Road. And so as part of that traffic impact analysis, it did take into consideration the mix of uses that is proposed. And, it wasn't anticipated that there would be adverse impacts associated with this development on the surrounding transportation network. There will be the need for some additional improvements, and
and some participation in a traffic signal, future traffic signal near Rogers and Airport Road. But the level of service was in compliance with our benchmarks in our code.
Thank you. And then also because of the proximity to the Mountain Brook development, there's going to be the additional reliever road that's being constructed as part of that development, correct?
Correct. Mountain Brook Drive will continue to the east, connect to Dry Creek Drive. That'll connect over and ultimately over to Hover Street, where there'll be a traffic signal at that intersection as well. And it'll also, provide that connection to Dry Creek Drive, which has access down to Nelson Road and Hover also.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. And I want to thank Councilwoman Martin for bringing this up, because this is a good question that should go before the Transportation Advisory Board. Every time we have a development that is on Nelson Road, we get the same answers, that that there will be no impact to Nelson or to the intersection. So I think that we need to push what the long range plans are for Nelson Road. So thanks for bringing that up. I think that we really need to pursue that.
All right. So can we have a motion?
I'll move approval of ordinance 2021-06.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Dr. Waters, seconded by Councilmember Peck. Any further discussion, dialogue, or debate? All right. Seeing none, go ahead and vote. Say aye if you want.
Aye.
Okay.
Nay. All right. So the ayes have it unanimously. Let's move on. Thank you very much, Ms. Brunk.
Thank you,
and your
Mr.
team.
Mayor. Thank you, Council.
All right. All right, let's move on to 10C, ordinance 2021-07, a bill for an ordinance authorizing a farmland lease agreement between the city of Longmont and Patricia Eckel on the Eckel property. Are there any questions from council? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close out the public hearing. Do we have a motion? I will move ordinance 2021-07.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I moved it. Councilmember Christensen seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. All right, 10D, ordinance 2021-08, a bill for an ordinance authorizing a farmland lease agreement between the city of Longmont and Thomas Seaman and Diane Seaman on the Bolander property. Any questions from council? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Can we have a motion?
I'll move approval of ordinance 2021-08.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Dr. Waters, seconded by Councilmember Christensen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously. 10E, which is ordinance 2021-09, a bill for an ordinance approving the third amendment to the lease for Vance Brown Municipal Airport parcel SW-P1. Any questions from council? All right, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter. Nobody called in. Do we have a motion?
So
I'll move ordinance 2021-09.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Councilmember Martin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, that's it for the second ordinances on second reading. Let's go ahead and go back to items removed from the consent agenda. I believe it was A, F, and G. Is that right? All right, so let's go ahead and who pulled A? Councilmember Peck.
thank you, Mayor Bagley. In this ordinance, I disagree with the paragraph on page 2, line 16 of the ordinance. This states that ADUs can be short-term rentals. And my concern is if that ADUs are short-term rentals, we are pulling those from our affordable housing stock as long-term rentals. ADUs are, historically have not been really made for the rental market. They were for families, friends who were coming to stay, or children who came home to stay. They were called different things, mother-in-law houses, etc. But I also am concerned that if these are considered short-term rentals, then how does that affect only having one STR per block? If it happens to be somebody's ADU, does that exclude everybody else on that block who has perhaps purchased another home as an investment property as an STR? Because an ADU is smaller. And so I would make a motion that we take ADUs out as short-term rentals from the ordinance. So,
And just a quick point of clarification right now, Joni, this would permit short-term rentals if you live there, right? It will allow you to rent out your primary residence and a secondary residence in Longmont, correct? And that would include ADUs.
Correct. However, you do have to either live in your house or your ADU as a precursor to having an ADU. And any subsequent ADU on the same block face, as council will recall, has to go through a conditional use permit process with Planning Commission to get their license.
right.
So there is a process for that. And we currently have about, I think, 11 or 12 ADUs that are licensed short-term rentals.
And so, for example, that ADU, like in Prospect, those one-bedroom apartments out back, for example, that's an ADU that would be covered by the ordinance, correct?
Mayor Bagley, actually the short-term rentals, while they're licensed at Prospect, the PUD for Prospect actually by right allows ADUs and would continue to do so absent a short-term rental ordinance.
No, but what I'm saying is that, I'm not talking about whether or not ADUs are permitted. I'm talking about the use of the ADU, which is the short-term rental.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
That's what this ordinance is saying, that they can be used. And that's what I am objecting to, that they should be long-term rentals.
I was just making absolutely sure that we all were on the same page. I get it. All right, Councilmember Christensen.
I would second that. The whole point of having ADUs, of us in the last few years encouraging ADUs, is to help with the housing stock, not tourists. And we really do need housing, long-term rentals. And if people are turning that, I think Prospect is a different example, because that has to be grandfathered in, because that was part of their whole agreement. But if we allow ADUs to be turned into short-term rentals, we're back to square zero with increasing our housing.
Dr. Waters?
Yeah, I just need to have clarified. It sounds to me like if there were a dozen ADUs on a block, you could have a dozen short-term rentals on that block outside of Prospect.
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters. So the way that the ordinance has been written is if there is more than one short-term rental, doesn't matter if it's a house or an ADU, on the same block face, they have to go through a conditional use site plan to get a license. So there is a way to regulate how many on each block. And that approval goes through our Planning and Zoning Commission process. So if you and I live next door to each other, we can't both have one unless one of us gets a conditional use.
The ordinance stipulates, right, one ADU per block, or no, one short-term rental per block.
Correct.
So what would be the conditions for approval of a second one, given the ordinance says you can't have a second one on the same block?
So the ordinance actually states that you can have a second one if you go through the conditional use site planning process and you go to the Planning Commission and they approve it. So there's a higher standard of review to make sure that we're not getting too many short-term rentals within any one block in a neighborhood.
So we can have multiple short-term rentals on a block if they're ADUs, with the second or third or whatever being approved by Planning and Zoning.
Correct.
Councilmember Martin.
So I'd like to ask what the reason for such an exception would be. I mean, when we were very first considering short-term rentals, we heard from a lot of residents who said, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to lose my house. Would that be one of the reasons for a variance that would allow a second one to be on the same block? Or if not, what other exceptional conditions might do that?
Mayor Begley and Councilmember Martin, so it's not a variance process, it's a conditional use site plan process. And there are specific criteria within that site plan review process that would have to be met. The conditional use process also allows additional conditions to be placed on site plans if the Planning Commission saw reasons why they may want to put limitations. To date, we have never had anyone apply to have a conditional use. So this hasn't actually come up yet. We have 103 short-term rentals licensed, and so far haven't had this issue.
All right, there's a motion on the table where Councilmember Peck, the motion is to remove the paragraph in the proposed ordinance stating that ADUs would be permitted to be used as short-term rentals. And that was seconded by Councilmember Christensen. If there's no further debate, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, the ayes carry it 4-3.
Mayor,
all
I'm
right.
sorry, who was the?
No, I'm sorry. The mayor, Councilmember Waters, and Councilmember Martin opposed. The 4 majority, the others were the ayes. So I move that we table this till legal is able to remove the paragraph and then bring it back.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say, I'm sorry, Councilmember Christensen?
I had one more thing that I wanted to add.
All right,
But
we've already voted, so it's over. All right, so let's go ahead and Councilmember Waters.
Just to clarify, we voted to amend one part of what's in front of us. If we have other questions,
the motion right now is just to table it until the ordinance comes. So to table it until legal can remove the paragraph, make the adjustments, and then we can vote on it without Eugene having a coronary. All right, Councilmember Peck.
I guess I do need clarification. If someone else would like to make a different motion on the same ordinance, and it also has to go to legal, don't we want to have everything on the table at the same?
All right, I'll withdraw my motion. Is there anything else from people who want to change something in the ordinance? Councilmember Christensen.
yes, that's what I was trying to say. On page 2, line 22, it says that the person who lives there must be a natural person. But one page over on page 4, E, it says that the primary dwelling, it's allowed if the primary dwelling is in the name of an LLC or a trust or any other legal documentation deemed sufficient by the director, which opens it up to a whole can of worms because we have no way of knowing, because our Secretary of State does not list any of the principals or entities in an LLC or in any business. So we have no way of knowing who these entities would be. I thought we had agreed that this was just going to be, these were just going to be allowed by natural persons.
I guess the thing is that the only thing an LLC does, or any other type of legal entity, is to just protect it from financial liability. Meaning you go to the bank and you get a loan for the property, and then you put it in, Poly LLC.
Yeah.
And then if you default on the mortgage, then the bank can't come after you personally. It has nothing to do whether or not, I mean, there's absolutely zero, or if I put it in a trust because if I die and I want my kids to have my house, but they're children, then it's now in the Brian Bagley Trust. But I still want them to have the house, but I don't want them to be able to sell it, and I want it to be managed. And I know that there's this prevailing thought that corporations are bad, et cetera. I get that, but in this particular case, I don't see a downside to just allowing people to put it into a business entity in order to conduct business with their financial institutions.
Well,
Councilmember
I do understand how that works, but in fact, most churches and, many sole proprietorships or LLCs and all that stuff. But nevertheless, it makes it impossible for us to tell whether this is a person who actually lives here or not, whether it is a natural person or whether it's one person, one guy who lives here, or whether it's a consortium of doctors who are buying up houses in Longmont. I mean, because we do not have access to who owns these LLCs.
Councilor
Generally.
Martin. Okay, Councilor Martin.
And I think that we can probably appeal to Deputy Tate on this, but it seems to me that when the ADU is permitted or when the short-term rental is licensed, you have an opportunity to require the LLC holders to disclose who they are. Do you not? Does that need to be in the ordinance, or can that just be part of the operation of licensing? Yes, Ms. Tate, please.
Teresa,
Thank you.
we're waiting for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor Bagley, I was waiting to be acknowledged.
No, so go ahead. Go ahead. Staff usually just jumps in. So go ahead.
So Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Martin, certainly we could require that. We should write it in the ordinance if that is a desire of this council. However, we can't have both of those provisions existing at the same time. And so we're looking at whether the person is a Longmont resident, right? So the person applying for the license. But the house could still be held in some other form. And that would be permissible.
Which would allow us to know if that's a natural person who's applying and therefore tells us what we need to know. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay. Councilor Peck?
So that makes sense. But if the person that is applying does not actually own that house, it's owned by an LLC that may be in a different, because you can register LLCs in many states. That doesn't necessarily mean that even though the person applying lives in Longmont, do they actually own that home? Are they just an agent that happens to live in Longmont? And I think that's where the loophole gets a little shaky. So
Mayor and Council, I'm sorry, Councilmember Peck, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
no, that's okay. So that is my concern about the LLCs.
Mayor and Councilmember Peck, I think that's a useful clarification that Councilmember Peck, you and Councilmember Martin bring up. And certainly if this council would like to make a motion for a clarification, we can bring that back.
Councilor Peck, I'm sorry, Councilor Christensen?
I would like to make that motion that we clarify that point. Do I have a second?
No, I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Say nay.
Aye.
All right, Dr. Waters?
Yeah, I do have a question. I wouldn't have pulled this off of this question. I would have followed it up, but since we're in the conversation. On page 4, line 20, number 8, it's off-street parking. It reads, unless specified as a condition of approval on the short-term rental license, no additional parking is required for short-term rentals. Should I interpret that to mean that a short-term rental must have sufficient parking arrangements or space to not have renters park on the street. Parking must be off-street.
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters. So just like with this, with any residence, we would allow on-street parking. What we're saying here is you're not required to provide an additional on-site parking space beyond what already exists for the home for your ADU.
So how many, do we have any constraints? How many vehicles could be associated with a renter of an ADU or of a short-term rental?
So we do not have any parking constraints for short-term rentals right now.
Well, I interpreted that line differently than what I obviously misinterpreted it, because I thought it meant something else. And I will tell you, in the last neighborhood group leaders meeting, I was asked about this and a concern expressed by residents who have the streets occupied by the vehicles of guests renting a short-term rental. And I interpreted this to mean that they had to be parking on site, not on the street. So I have to say, if I do personally have a concern, I'm not certain what kind of a motion to make here or what the constraint should be. But if we have 2 people, right, and then 2 people per bedroom, I mean, you could have 4 or 5 vehicles associated with a short-term renter, and that's a problem for the neighbors, I think. So I'm curious what we do to avoid the entire street being taken up with, or too much of the street, the curb side parking being taken up with guests of short-term rentals.
All right.
Joni, I guess that's a question for you.
So I think that would require us changing the ordinance to dedicate parking spaces specifically for short-term rentals.
I also don't think,
and increasing the amount of parking either on site for anyone that did have a short-term rental, regardless of if it's in their house or in their ADU, because we're talking about short-term rentals in general. And so the parking requirements would apply to everything, not just one or the other.
and I guess just a random comment the thought that I'm having is, I could understand if we don't want to do short-term rentals because we don't want people coming in and out, and that we want a community where we all get to know our neighbors, et cetera. But I personally don't think that, I mean, if somebody has an ADU, if it's their property, it's not we shouldn't be dictating to citizens of Longmont that they use their property in a certain way to accommodate our needs for affordable housing. I also don't think that I mean, if it's public parking, it's a city street. And so I know I'm in the minority, but I just get frustrated when we have these conversations because I don't think it's cool that a local government tell people what to do with their houses and with their parking. So
do I still have?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm supportive of short-term rentals, and much of what you just said I agree with, in terms of the property owners having some property rights that they ought to be able to exercise. And I do think I favor allowing, which this ordinance includes, it carries over from the existing ordinance, or is continued from the existing ordinance, that property owners can own a second property that they use it as an ADU. But I do have a concern when that ADU potentially creates parking problems that didn't exist before there was a short-term rental. It seems to me that in fairness to the other property owners in a neighborhood, there should be some consideration, and I'm not certain what the language should be, but it seems to me that there ought to be some responsibility if you're going to offer a short-term rental, that you also provide the parking necessary for your guests, and it doesn't become a problem for your neighbor.
Although,
Mayor, may I offer a clarification of a
sure,
point?
go ahead.
So I'm hearing the council refer to ADUs as if they function somehow separately than a main structure short-term rental. And so I just want to clarify for the group that, well, first, that ADUs have been in our short-term rental ordinance from the beginning. So this is not something new that we added. This has been here. In addition, you'll notice that the main structure and or ADU could be rented out. So, you know, it doesn't require that someone live in the main structure and rent out the ADU. They could flip and reverse that. So I just wanted to offer that clarification because I'm sort of hearing it as if there's a difference and there's not. In the same way that if there is one short-term rental on the block, then any other short-term rental on that block is a conditional use. So that is not limited to ADUs. That is true of any short-term rental.
Bend that back to my question about parking, Teresa. I mean, I understand what you just said. What does that have to do with how many parking spaces or parking that should be accommodated by the owner of the property?
Mayor, Council Member Waters, I don't believe that it actually does have particular bearing on it, other than I think your parking concern, while you are referring to it as a concern about ADU parking, it seems to me that it's a concern about short-term rental parking.
Yeah, if I said that, I misspoke. I meant short-term rentals, not the ADUs. I meant short-term rentals. So if I said that, I appreciate the clarification.
And I just want to point out, so in my ADU out back, if my daughter and her husband, I'll get you right to you, Councilmember Martin. I see you. You're next. So I was just going to say, I have an ADU, right? If my daughter and her husband live there and I rent to them, they're going to have 2 cars. But if I decide to use it as a short-term rental, if a different person's in there every day, they're still only going to have 1 or 2 cars. It's not like it increases the parking. It's a queue that just flips. It might be a Volkswagen one day, then a station wagon, then a Buick or whatever, but the parking is going to still have the same amount of cars unless they have like 8 people show up to the 1-bedroom apartment to party. But anyway, let's go. It's been a long weekend for me. Let's go. All right, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I think that we are in this discussion completely ignoring the idea that Longmont has a vision and a policy about on-street parking, which is that we don't reserve it. You know, just because you own property on the block, you can't necessarily find a place to park near your house. You know, them's the breaks. And I don't understand in this whole discussion about lots of people being in a short-term rental, regardless of how it's configured, how that's any different from a property owning couple having 5 children who all enter their teen and college years in time to have 5 extra cars associated with that house. The neighbors aren't going to like that, but there isn't anything that they could do about it, and it would be completely unprecedented for a municipality to regulate something like that. And I don't see any difference. So I think we should stick to our guns and say on-street parking is on-street parking, and we don't regulate it.
So just a quick question. So we passed the motion to remove the paragraph about that Councilmember Peck referred to. And then did we have a second motion to direct staff to bring something else back? What was that one? I don't remember. Can somebody help me out?
Mayor, it was Councilmember Christensen's motion to clarify, for staff to clarify a point.
All right, I would like to make a motion, but before I do that, I'm going to move to table it so that the city's attorney's office can bring it back with these 2 changes. Is there anything else that you want to discuss, Joni?
Mayor Bagley, thank you. So I would also point out that the the motions you've made will create some non-conforming issues that will have to be dealt with for those that we have already licensed that are in ADUs. And just a reminder that anything in Prospect and Mill Village will continue to be allowed to have short-term rentals in their ADUs because that is how their PUDs were written. And that supersedes the code in terms of this section of the ordinance. So I just want to be really clear that will not eliminate all ADUs as short-term rentals in the city. And it will create some navigation from a non-conforming use standpoint that I will need to talk to Teresa and Eugene about.
So limiting the supply of ADUs, and I got one. Ouch. All right. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Joni, I don't have a problem with that at all. That to me is no different than an HOA having completely different standards and rules than other parts of the city. So that's fine with me.
Councilmember Christensen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ADUs are to be rented. It's just that they should be rented long-term. Anyway, I would second the mayor's motion to table it and send it back to Eugene and Teresa.
Part of that motion is to, part of it is to point out non-conforming uses, Joni, and present that to us so we can deal with those things. Okay? Yeah.
Just one more thing to correctly answer Councilmember Waters' parking question. Luckily, my staff is helpful and feeding me some code answers. So for an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, and we're not talking about a short-term rental, ADUs are required to have a minimum of 1 parking space and no more than 2. So they typically have some form of off-street parking associated with them by code. Sorry about that. Didn't have that on my.
All right. I'll Dr. Waters.
Just to clarify, that doesn't apply to a short-term rental that's not an ADU, right?
So a short-term rental that's just in a normal house would have whatever parking spaces were allocated to the house, be it in a garage or the pad in front of your garage.
And just to clarify one more point, the limited, the number of people who can occupy the short-term rental are 2 people per conforming bedroom plus 2 more.
Correct.
That would be for a 3-bedroom home, you could have 8 guests.
Correct. Yep.
With the associated number of automobiles.
But there's no limit on the number.
Yep, I think that's a problem.
All right. There's a motion on the floor to bring it back with these changes when legal has them ready. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. So Eugene's back there somewhere. Have fun, guys. All right, let's go on to item F. I believe that was Marcia, Councilmember Martin.
Yes, I just really have a statement to make. This information sharing agreement is very generous of the city of Fort Collins to do it. It's not going to cost us anything. They've been very enterprising in terms of developing software to do this. I'm going to vote for it. I just want to say it shouldn't have to be this way because it is not the job of the cities to put together some kind of skunkworks software to try to estimate when our coincident peaks are going to happen. That's the job of the Platte River Power Authority. And I want to say that in the Climate Action Task Force more than a year ago, the Platte River Power Authority's liaison, Andy Butcher, who's no longer with the authority as I understand it, or on his way out, I'm not quite sure which, held with us a very cogent discussion of the necessity for signaling of this sort. I have a statement from him in writing that I will be happy to share that says there isn't any, we aren't doing any. And in that analysis that the Climate Action Task Force did, Mr. Butcher was presented with an analysis of a good and studied algorithm for doing this kind of signaling. So this Platte River Power Authority is not doing their job. They owe us this data. And while it's lovely that we're going to have this short-term workaround, we certainly should not consider it a solution. And we should keep the pressure on Platte River Power Authority to do their job. And I'm done, and I move adoption of item F.
I'll second that. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. All right, item 9G, approval of Housing and Human Services Advisory Board recommendation to fund 2 projects for the 2021 Affordable Housing Funds available. Councilmember Peck?
Thank you. I just want to make a statement here.
You went mute, Joan.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry. During the COVID presentation, I asked Harold specifically about the mobile unit to see what Longmont was doing, because we've heard from the St. Benedict's ministry. So I would like to, I'm pleased that Longmont is considering having their own mobile unit to supply the vaccine. But I would like to hear from, as a clarification, from Karen or Kathy as to why they weren't funded, so the public and the rest of council understands.
I think that's
item is not the, so the Human Service Agency funding recommendations.
Oh,
is in general business.
That's
This
right. I'm
is-
sorry.
Yeah, so this is a different item.
Never mind.
Come time, yeah.
Okay, I want that answer later. Thank you. Okay, I move 9G.
Second. All right, that was moved by Councilmember Peck and seconded by Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, let's go on to 12A. It's only 9:30. We doing okay? We've got two items left, right? All right, so 12A, 2021 Human Service Agency funding recommendations. Hold on, Councilmember Peck, you look happy, so go ahead. What do you want to say?
I'm just going to, since I already made my statement, I'll just ask Karen for an explanation as to why that was not funded.
So Mayor and Councilmember Peck, Eliberto Mendoza's waiting in the wings to make a brief presentation. So would it be fabulous if you could go through with that presentation, and then we'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay.
So Eliberto?
Good morning, sorry. Good evening, Mayor Bagley and Council. Yeah, I am going to go through a short, brief presentation on the proposed Human Agency Services funding. And then, yes, we'd be happy to answer questions about that, whatever questions you may have about the Human Service Agency funding. So thank you for bringing up the PowerPoint, Susan. There's a 10-slide presentation that we're going to go through. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Next slide. So you saw this in your council packet. You know, we are really, the board is very appreciative of the fact that I think it was in 2019 for 2020, this council, you know, committed to increasing the Human Services Agency funding to reach 3% by 2022. And it went from 2.05 to 2.37 in 2020, and then it went up to 2.52 for 2021. In part due to the pandemic and the concern around the budget, but the board is still very appreciative of the increase, and we hope that commitment to increase the set aside to 3% from the general fund continues. This year, because of that increase, we were able to set aside 877,455 for our agencies. That's an increase of, I think, about 80-some thousand, 100-some thousand to base. And it increased, over the 2020 number. We hope that it continues to increase as we move into 2022. And for the first time since 2017, I think we switched the percentage of funding going to the agencies versus what's being dedicated to address the issue of housing insecurity and adult homelessness. Last year it was the other way around, and this year it's 51% to the agencies and 49% to adult homelessness and housing insecurity. So that's also a positive trend as well. Next slide, please. So just so you understand very quickly the framework of how it works, we really do, we put out an application process. We contract with agencies that are working to improve the situation and of our residents with low to moderate income, to ensure that they meet their basic physical, social, economic, or other needs. And we do fund a wide variety of safety net services. Of course, those services are connected to our priorities, which are listed there: housing, stability, food, nutrition, health and well-being, self-sufficiency and resiliency, education, skill building, and safety and justice. And the process is also directly connected to our human services needs assessment that we just did this year. And then we work together with our Human Services Advisory Board to coordinate the process, and we make these recommendations to council. Next slide. So the way the process works, it's very much a formulaic process. Now, even within a formulaic process, you cannot remove human subjectivity. That's just impossible. But by doing it in a formulaic process, we try and implement as much as possible an objective measure of the applications and the agencies, to give ourselves just a good way of scoring and providing the most reasonable recommendations possible to the council. So it uses the average scores of both staff and board. Board looks at different questions as staff looks, and then finally there's a weighted piece based on addressing the priority area and or activities identified in the needs assessment. And there is the score determines how much of the request will be funded, what percentage of the request is funded, and applications this year, and it has changed, it's been different from year to year, because we always take a look at the funding matrix and the allocation formula every year. This year it was 72.5 was our ceiling, or not ceiling, our floor. You had to get at least that to be funded. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So here is our just so you know, our priorities and our ceilings. So of that 877,000, we wanted to try and spend 25% of it on housing and all the way down. One caveat on that is a guideline and something that we aspire to. We don't control who applies, how much they ask for. And so sometimes we don't meet these exactly. So for example, I think when we go to when you actually see the actual percentages, we got closer to housing stability, but we went over on education and skill building. And that is primarily due to the fact that we have a lot of education providers, childcare and early childhood education providers that apply. And so because they apply and because they score well, scoring is very important. You have to score well. Then we will on occasion go over, even though it's our priority. But what this priority does is it helps us set the individual agency ceilings. In other words, you cannot get more, any individual agency cannot get more than 50% of the priority ceiling. And that helps us set a total amount that any agency can receive. And this year there were a couple of agencies that hit that ceiling and could not be funded more than what the ceiling was. So that's why these are important. Next slide. So we received applications from 40 agencies to fund 46 programs, and their total request was 1.34 million. We only had 877,000. We did the agency hearings, which were very interesting because like you all meeting virtually, we did ours virtually too, and it was a very interesting process because we typically had those in person in the past. Staff and board reviewed and scored application according to the criteria, and allocated basically on a formulaic approach. And so there you see we fund 31 agencies and 37 programs. Next slide, please. And so just to show you what I was talking about, education and skill building, we went over, it was supposed to be at 20%, we were at 23%. Housing supposed to be at 25, we were at 23. And again, that's primarily due to who applied and how much they applied for. We don't control or tell people what to apply for, how much to apply for. Next slide. So of course, now we want to turn it over to receive questions and then ask for council to give us guidance on whether to adopt the 21 recommendations for funding.
All right. Councilor Peck, was that a raise hand or a swap?
A little of both.
Okay, do you have something to say?
Yes, actually, I would like an explanation for the St. Benedict's ministry, but I first of all, I want to say congratulations. I think that this HHSA does an incredible amount of work, and all the effort you put into it and all the people that you help. So kudos to you. And just for our education, let us know why you didn't fund this group.
Okay, Mayor and Councilmember Peck, I'm ready to answer that question, and Eliberto might have something to supplement that. So, so when we looked at the scoring, so obviously they didn't meet the threshold, the 72.5%, and the at least from a staff perspective, which is really what we can address, the lower scores were related to the collaboration. We didn't see the level of collaboration with some of the other clinics that are offering services to some of the same population. So Hope Light Clinic I had just talked about. They didn't mention any collaboration with Hope Light Clinic, who had just gone through an expansion and is doing some pretty amazing work with providing medical services to uninsured and underinsured individuals. At the point in time when they applied, they had not acquired their van or their mobile unit yet. They were in the process. They did, they weren't able to provide the 2 days a week clinic at the R Center because of the COVID pandemic. And so they were providing some service in the parking lot, and they just, didn't have all of their plan for how they were going to do the mobile outreach. So those were, I think, some of the primary reasons. I think there were some questions about the financials and the amount of money that they wanted to rely on from the city was was over a quarter of their budget, their operating budget. So those were some of the reasons that went into the scoring. And then if I then what I would, and then we had some change conditions, right? And so so change from St. Benedict's, they did get their vehicle, and they're on their way in terms of their plan. I think the other thing is that we did, and Carmen Ramirez and I did meet with Dan Eman, from public safety, and they talked about their community health program, and that now that they do have a nurse practitioner on board that is there, 2 days a week. That nurse practitioner is also an employee with Hope Light, so they're doing the collaboration with Hope Light, and we now have the capacity internally through our public safety community health program to basically be available 7 days a week. They are, and we started to work on a plan for mobile clinics. They can do those on demand. They also can set up, mobile sites based on where the need is. And so in my opinion, because we have this change condition, we really are in a position to be able to provide that service. They are enrolled in they're an enrolled provider for administering the vaccinations. Whenever they get the vaccine, they're just waiting on the supply. So we do believe we have that covered without an additional investment. So again, things did change from when we scored and made our recommendation. So I hope that helps to answer the question.
It does, and I appreciate the fact that that you use our on-site nonprofits within our community to work in our community. So I thank you for that. And with that, I move the recommendation for the funding.
I'll second that. All right, it was moved by Councilmember Peck, seconded by Councilmember Christensen. Councilmember Waters?
I have 3 questions. Can I?
You may ask 2. No, just kidding. Go.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say to Karen and to Alberto and to the board, I'm proud, right, to be able to cast a vote on this. That this municipality has this commitment to award these kinds of, to give back to the community. It's money, right? The money we collected from the community, give it back in this way for these purposes makes me proud as a member of the council. That's a statement, not a question. Here's the first question. For the St. Benedict Health Ministry or any other proposer, do you provide them feedback as you provided us feedback tonight in response to Councilmember Peck's question on what they can do in subsequent years to become more competitive with their proposals?
Mayor and Councilmember Waters, we do provide that feedback, and usually it's upon request. And this year, the advisory board members suggested that we reach out to the agencies that did not receive funding and offer them that opportunity to discuss the the scoring, what were the areas that we saw could use some improvement. So to really continue to build that relationship with
Right.
folks. So
I think that's
we're in the
important.
process of doing that. Right.
Part of the process. So I appreciate that. Number one. Number two, as we look at, we don't look at the whole proposals, but as we look at what you provided and the objectives that are going to be addressed with this funding, in my view, in the time I've been on the council, I think that's come a long way, and I appreciate that. But it does leave the question about evaluation, right? The data that are collected on those objectives, and what kind of conclusions you can reach or they can reach. How do you receive their evaluation, the evaluation of their work based on last year's funding?
So, Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Waters, we received 2 reports. One is in middle of the year, so by July 31st, we need a mid-year report that is based on the scope of work in their contract, in the agency's funded agency contract. That scope of work is drafted via negotiations between usually me and the agency based on those objectives and outcomes that are in their applications. So we take those outcomes, and and we have a conversation about them, trying to make sure that they are something that they can reach, something that is measurable, basically kind of going through that SMART goal process. And then they check in the middle of the year, and then we get our final report on January 31st. And we work with our partners at the City of Boulder and Boulder County to create a form for them to fill out. And let me see if I can find a better place so it's not so dark.
You're okay.
All right. Still dark. Okay. I'm sorry.
We can hear you. We can hear you. That's what's important.
Okay, so we work with the Boulder County and City of Boulder to try and we do a form that we track all of the data that we get, and then we have a place to share data with our partners to see if we're getting the same kind of data, if there's issues, and then if City of Boulder finds something, or if I find something and we deem it necessary to reach out to the agency to ask about, hey, are you going to be able to meet these outcomes? Then we have this conversation with them. So that is, at this point, the level of evaluation that we're doing. We're always looking to try and improve our evaluation process. We're always trying to help our agencies improve the development of their logic models, because that's what their contract is based on. And we want to make sure that the contract reflects what their logic models and the work they're trying and wanting to accomplish in this year is reflected in the contract. So that's how we approach evaluation.
Well, in the slice of that we get to see, it's obvious that work that you've come a long way with them with that work. And so it's good to hear that we're serious about the evaluation. My third question is this. Alberto, I think you identified 37 agencies that are going to receive funding. And we saw the percentages. Numbers of dollars or percentages of dollars, however, whatever the best cut at this, of those dollars are going to agencies. What percentage of the agencies or the amount of money or percentage of the money serve children?
So that's a great question, and it's a hard answer to give because so for example, you could very quickly determine from
I think Karen's ready to answer.
Okay.
I had a heads up that you might ask that question, Councilmember Waters. So, so I did some calculation. You might be answering this differently, Eliberto, but in terms of the dollars and that we are allocating, and I indicated that would be to children and youth programs, serving programs, and it's a broad array, but that's about $240,000 that we've allocated through this year's Human Service Agency process that is allocated toward agencies that serve children and youth, and then that on top of the amount that we are investing through the CARES Act funding, which was roughly around 700,000, and then the other funding that we have allocated in Children, Youth, and Families budget to help with early childhood education. That's about another 250,000. So there's so if your question is, so that's really the answer to what we are providing through this grant program, through our CARES Act funding, and through the special dedicated early childhood education funding.
Well, that's really good to know, because last week we were criticized for underinvesting in children as a city and as a council. And what you just shared is, in addition to what we've done with parks and BMX tracks and skate parks and ball fields, soccer fields across the city, tens of millions of dollars invested in recreation facilities. So I appreciate that information because it gives a more complete answer than my weak attempt at it last week in response to a caller who was criticizing our underinvestment in children in this community. Thanks. And I'm happy to move approval if this is the time to do that.
I think it was already moved, was it not? I think it was, yeah, it was already been moved, but yeah, Councilmember Christensen?
I would add on a little bit to that anything that we are doing that benefits the housing for families benefits children, and anything that we're doing with food benefits children. And I mean, all of this mostly does benefit children too. And I would hope that when the budget comes up this fall, we can increase the Housing and Human Services, restore it to the funding level, which was 3% that we had in 2018. Anyway, but I wanted to thank Karen and Eliberto very much for your leadership and your staff evaluations. And I wanted to thank the Housing and Human Services Board for the incredibly hard work that they do every year, and their thoughtful and intelligent discussions, and the pleasure of their company. They're a terrific group of people, and they put in a lot of hard work. So, and I, as the liaison, I heartily endorse that we pass this as presented.
All right, Harold, why don't you make your comment, then we'll vote.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to say, you saw this in the Health and Human Service funding piece, and you saw us touch on CARES funding and these other things. But I wanted to say, and actually in this case, is a big thank you to Karen, Eliberto, all of their staff that was involved in this, because in the middle of doing this normal process, we threw $700,000 at them late last year and said, need you to put this to early childhood education, and we need it out by the end of the year. We need your help on the business assistance. And so, you know, when you look at that amount of time and that much money that they moved through, I just wanted to personally say thanks, because when we gave them that charge, they didn't blink and they just did it. And that's a testament to the work that they do on a regular basis. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thanks, Karen, Eliberto, Molly, everyone that worked on this, because it was a phenomenal job that really is helping our community in a time when our community needs it.
All right, thanks, Harold. All right, we've got a motion on the floor approving the 2021 Human Service Agency funding recommendations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Thanks again, Karen. All right, let's move on to 12B, an update on Longmont Ice Pavilion operations. So I believe the issue is, Harold, what is the current status of the operations, and what do you intend it being moving forward? And then as a result of us putting on the schedule, I suspect, knowing you, you made some changes or not. Just those basically are the three questions I think council has.
Was Karen and Jeff on here?
Yes.
There's Jeff. So I want to kind of give a brief history on, and I put this in an email for you all, but this is a good time for me to kind of give you the overview of this. So as we were getting ready to move into the opening of the ice rink, obviously we were in a much different situation with COVID, and we were actually looking, I believe the number was at 50 or 75 people in the rink. And we were talking about, was it 75 or 50, Jeff?
I think it was 50.
It was 50. So we were talking about bring them on and move it. So it was a larger number when we were actually doing really the pro forma on this. Things changed. Number went from 50 to 25. We're still working at that number as we're looking at this. And that really created a financial issue for us as we were looking forward. If council will remember, when we went through our budget, the difference between 2020 and the 2021 budget was we had already budgeted a lot of these expenditures in the 2020 budget, and we were covering it through our overall budget adjustments for 2020. When we presented the 2021 budget, we actually had to reduce the revenue coming into recreation based on the limited activities that they were going to be able to do. We said, and I'm remembering this, we had to cut 25%, correct, Jeff?
Yes, and 30% of temp wages.
Temp wages to make that budget work. To be very clear on this, because of where we see this moving and the capacity and it occurring a little bit slower, we actually think there's a potential we may have to look at it again later in the year if things don't open up as we anticipated. So there's still going to be an ongoing budget issue for recreation. At the time, because we had already began preparing to open up the ice rink, we made the decision that we could open it through the end of 2020 and then carry it with 1 month in 2021 and still manage the budget issues that were in play. In order to continue this, Jeff, it will cost how much to the end of February, and then
$25,000 to go the end of February and $32,000 to get through mid-March.
And so for us, from a budget perspective, we know that there's other budget issues coming at us in the end of the year. And so that's why we made the decision that we did, because we just don't know what's going to continue coming in the recreation world. So what we would need to continue this is 25,000 to keep it open to the end of February, 32 mid-March. That's our normal closing period.
Councilmember Martin.
Yeah, can you clarify those numbers? Is it 25 to the end of February and then an additional 32,000, or is the total to get to the mid-March closing date 32,000?
The total's 32,000. It's an additional 7,000 that will get us to that for those 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peck.
So I move that we use council contingency funds in the amount of $32,000 to fund the Roosevelt Pavilion ice rink for the rest of the season.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Waters.
I'm wondering if Councilmember Peck would entertain a friendly amendment to the motion and establish the reason for this is the COVID-19 pandemic. That because of the pandemic, we would allocate funding from our contingency fund to support the ice rink. Since we're setting a precedent with this, it's a precedent for me that the next time we have a pandemic, I'm comfortable with this precedent if we do it every time we have a pandemic. But I think that's an important consideration. So if you would accept that amendment.
Absolutely, yes.
Can we just move forward with it that way?
Yes. So add that amendment on to my motion.
Did anybody second?
I believe it was seconded by Councilmember Darrell Faring. And all right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, let's go ahead and all in favor of the motion to, was there a number, an exact amount?
32,000.
And how much is in the contingency fund right now?
$155,701.
All right, I guess, I guess I'm going to vote against it.
Let me clarify that.
Yep.
You currently have 155,701. You're also carrying over 102,052. So once the carryover's there, it's the 50 plus the 102, 257.
I guess the given, I'm going to vote against it only because given how much, that sounds like a lot, but given the amount of time this particular council meeting has discussed about, telling people what to do with their private property for their ADUs and short-term rentals in order to help the affordable housing, what we heard from the Human Services Advisory Board about our priorities, I don't think ice skating should be one of them. I think we have other needs that are far more pressing, and I would point to every conversation we've had tonight. But that's my opinion. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Nay. All right, the ayes have it. Only I opposed. But I've got weak ankles.
Thank you.
I don't ice skate anyway. All right. Let's move on to final. Let's take a 2-minute break or 3-minute break and move to final call, public invited to be heard. All righty. All right, are we back?
Mayor, give me just a second so I can see that the slide has updated on our live stream.
All right, is that all of us? Who are we missing? 5, 6. That's all of us. All right, cool. Is there anybody in the, you said, is there anybody in the live stream you said?
No, Mayor, we have no callers. You may continue.
All right, perfect. All right, then mayor and council comments, anybody? All right, Councilmember Peck, you shut up first.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Actually, I'm going to give you an update on RTD, so if you can just bear with me for a couple of minutes. We had a meeting in December where we had a presentation from Randy Grauberger, who was the project manager for the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, and the presentation was on the Southwest Chief and the Front Range Passenger Rail. And I'm really sorry to say that Randy Grauberger is no longer with Front Range Passenger Rail. His engineering expertise, as well as the procurer of our CRISI grants from Dr. Cog, will really be missed. I don't know who is going to be in charge of that fund, those funds from the grants. But I'm really confident that this council and staff, along with the stakeholders on the Northwest Corridor, will continue to work with the Front Range Passenger Rail and the governor's office so that we can bring rail to the Front Range. But this weekend, I was really busy. I had conversations with both of our RTD directors, Lynn Geisinger, as well as Eric, from both of our districts. The Northwest Corridor financing is a huge conversation, but my conversation with them was that RTD is looking at it as a huge project and that we should break it down. And the first thing we need to do is to get that engineering and design study from the from BNSF. And then once we get that, we can discuss what that entails, break it down into segments, and that should be financed out of FISA. Lynn Geisinger said she thinks she has the votes to do that. So that was very promising. However, during the council meeting, I got a text from Eric. We'll be talking tomorrow. And he said it was announced at the board meeting tonight that RTD is going to hold a special study session on the Northwest Rail. It's going to be a deep dive on where we stand, and the chair of the board invited the governor to participate if he would like. So in my conversations this weekend, also I told them, because it's public record now, that we're either going to get the rail or we're going to get out, that it's no more playing games with anybody. So that conversation, that message has gone out to the directors, to everyone. And I just have to say, from some things that cannot be made public at this point, that this is just political. It's totally political. It is not really much about financing at all. So I want any information or any help or anything that you want to go back to the directors, to the CEO of RTD, please chime in, let me know, because it's going to take all of us to make our message heard loud and clear. So thank you. That's all I've got.
And Councilmember Beck, along with that, I've sent the same message. When are we set to have that executive session, Harold? Because I've gone one step further. It's like my opinion is we should move forward on legal options, and if they can show, because my concern is that if they get $4.5 to $5 million from Longmont every year, of course they're going to spend $750,000 to $1 million to do a study. At this point, I think it's just all lip service. I don't think we're ever going to get the train. And so if they can convince me otherwise, or us otherwise, great. But in the meantime, we need to start. So when's that executive session scheduled, Eugene?
So Mayor and Council, I will have to say we have capacity issues. Getting out of RTD is no small matter. And we have a lot of high priority items going at the moment. We've started looking at it, dusting off the stuff that we've done before. I think we are meeting with Phil Greenwald next week to get the history and current status. This is something that we don't track on a regular basis. So, I could see maybe at the end of February.
All right. Well, because if you've got capacity issues, maybe we need to think about, it's not I understand all too well what it's like when someone comes in and says, I need this done. And it's not you don't have the expertise, you don't have the history here. And so maybe we should consider outside counsel.
We're absolutely considering that. We need a funding source.
Because at this point, there's a difference between getting out of RTD and having an executive director of RTD and the board now saying in public, we are not doing the rail. And it's not an appropriate or efficient use of tax dollars, when the only reason why they have the tax dollars to begin with is because we voted for the purpose of bringing the train. And so I'm not talking about RTD, I'm just talking about fast tracks. And if we send the message of weakness of, well, we're under capacity, maybe we'll get around to it. I, for one, want to get on it. Go ahead, Councilmember Peck.
I agree with you, but I wouldn't rush into it at this point. And the reason I won't is that we finally have other organizations that will go to bat for us, like Dr. Cog and Commuting Solutions, Jared Polis. Let's face it, these CDOT works for the governor. We are also going to have transportation funding coming down the pike. I don't want to jump the gun. I think within 15 months to 2 years that we should see what we can accomplish with this new administration, with the new vision in the state, and let them do their job as well. I think that it would be wise to get the information, but to move forward on a lawsuit at this point.
I would argue that we shouldn't be having this discussion in public. This is all executive session topic, meaning that I don't want to have any conversation about what we should or should not do legally in public. So to me, we talked about last week about having an executive session on this matter.
Okay.
I think we should have it.
Agreed.
Have the executive session and we figure it out from there.
Okay.
But, so Eugene, just whenever you can. Okay, I hear you. All right.
So, and then Mayor, I certainly support your direction not to discuss legal strategy in public. It's a balance. We can come back with conceptual ideas probably by the end of February. To do, actual research and dig in is a much bigger project.
Well, because let me be clear. So it's like my whole take on this whole public service thing now. If nobody else cares, I don't. Just to be clear, meaning that I'm not going to carry any more water for anyone or anything or any topic where I'm alone. So if we don't hear, that's just a fact. So if we're not willing to actually move forward and do something, I don't want to talk anymore about RTD. I don't want to talk anymore about fast tracks. So if we're going to wait another 15 months to 2 years, let somebody else do that, but I don't want to. So that's my final comment for the evening. All right. Anybody else? Mayor and council comments? Councilmember Christensen?
Yeah, I wanted to really urge everybody who's listening, if anybody's listening right now, to get their shot. I got my shot this week. I know Councilwoman Peck got her shot. I presume Councilman Waters got his shot probably. Yeah, good. Yay. So that's because we're old, but I know people are waiting, thinking, oh, it's a lot of trouble. I'll see how it goes. Don't wait, because the sooner we can everybody get vaccinated, the more we can put this behind us, the more we can get everybody moving again. And I'll be very happy when we get to point 1B and start getting the teachers and the grocery workers and all the other people who are helping with everything. And I would like to point out to the people who think that vaccine is a lot of hooey. I'm old enough to remember that when I was a child, there was no measles vaccine. My good friend Sherry got the measles when she was about 2, and she became profoundly deaf. She built a good life for herself, but it was a lot harder for her than for anybody else. My dear friend Joan, who was an identical twin, contracted polio because there was not a polio vaccine until about 1957. She also built a good life for herself, but every single day she looked at her twin and saw what she should have looked like, but she didn't, because one leg was 4 inches shorter than the other and a third the size. So vaccine has saved this world so much misery. And for people to be spreading rumors about how vaccine is, it's bad for you and it's suspect, it's just irresponsible. And I really don't want to hear it anymore. And I would plead with you, get vaccinated as soon as you can. Go to Boulder County Health, look at all the things that are available, sign up for something, and just do it. Thanks.
All right, anybody else? Okay, Harold?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
All right, Eugene?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, cool. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. All right, we are adjourned with unanimous votage. All right, see you next week, guys.